Chapter 824. Yun Tianyu caught a clue. You said that she disappeared without a trace after the shoot. Yes. She nodded repeatedly. Yu looked at his watch. It was already past 5 in the morning. What time was it? I can't remember either. At this time, Yu was unexpectedly calm. Think about it carefully. She carefully recalled and said, it should be around 10. I really can't remember the exact time. I didn't pay attention to the time at that time. He hurriedly checked the last message sent by Yun Xianxia. It was 10:12 a.m. The time matched. On the other side, she cautiously asked, little friend, you. Is Yun Xianxia your mommy? Yes, he replied abruptly. Where are you now? Is it convenient for you to pick me up? She looked out the window. It was already late at night. She was a little worried and doubtful of this child, so she said, why don't we call the police first? Auntie, the police only filed a case after losing contact with her for 48 hours. Although we can still call the police now, it's already so late. How efficient do you think the police will be? Yu seriously reminded her. She was stunned by his calm analysis. This child. His rationality had completely overturned her worldview. How old was this child? Judging from his voice, he was no more than 6 or 7 years old. Were children nowadays so smart? He even knew the conditions for the police to file a case? Auntie, I'm very worried about my mommy, but I'm the only one at home now. It's inconvenient for me to go out, so I can only trouble you. Okay. Then, your house is Shanty Walk. I'll wait for you at the entrance. Okay. She hung up the phone, changed her clothes, and left with her car keys. Her apartment was only a 10-minute drive away from Shanty Walk. Soon, she arrived at the entrance of Shanty Walk. She sat in the car and was curiously looking at the entrance when a light knock came from the car door. The sudden movement startled her. She immediately looked over and saw a little munchkin wearing a white shirt and a small suit with suspenders. He was carrying a small backpack and standing at the car door. Surprised, she quickly unlocked the car door. Then, she watched helplessly as the handsome and delicate little boy nervously climbed into the car. His posture was as light as a cat. He quickly closed the door and fastened his seatbelt skillfully. Then, he looked at her. Let's go to the set. Her assistant, could she say that she was frightened? She had never seen a child who was still so calm even after his mommy was gone. She looked at him carefully. The child was only about 6 or 7 years old. He was so tender that it seemed as if milk could drip out of him. He had a handsome and pleasant little face and exquisite facial features. His eyebrows were indeed very similar to Yun Xianxia's. Did Xianxia really have a child? She was greatly shocked by this fact. Seeing her staring at him in a daze, he waved his hand in front of her. She returned to her senses and saw his serious expression. Auntie, you can't be in a daze while driving. It's very dangerous. She mumbled, thanks for the reminder, let's drive. Yun Tianyu ordered. In fact, he originally wanted to call Li Hanlin to pick him up. Chapter 825. She drove all the way to the set. At this moment, the set was in dead silence. All the props had been packed up and transported away. The huge parking lot had been restored to its original state, and there were no clues to be found. Yun Tianyu searched the set for a while but did not find anything. She stared blankly at his calm and rational face. She could not tell that he was only 6 or 7 years old. Were children nowadays so precocious? Yun Tianyu walked up to her and asked, Mommy sent me a message before I lost contact with her. It was around 10 p.m. Where did she go at that time? Hotel. Yes. She was drenched, so I let her take a shower in the hotel. Hotel? He could not help feeling suspicious. Yes. She explained, our production team booked a room in the hotel next door. It's usually for artistes to rest. Xiaxia's room was on the 10th floor. Yu asked, "Won't we know Mommy's whereabouts if we go to the hotel to check the surveillance footage?" His words woke her up from her daze. She smacked her head. Oh, right. Why didn't I think of that before? Yu secretly gave her a look of disdain. Because she was stupid. Of course, he could only criticize her inwardly. He did not show any contempt for her IQ on his face and only asked, "Can you bring me to the hotel, then?" Okay. She squatted down and wanted to carry him. Yin Tianyu said, "I'll walk by myself." She wondered if this child had non-human genes. Usually, children would be afraid of walking at night. Did he want to be carried? He did not want to be carried. His face seemed to be full of disdain. She wanted to cry but had no tears. The two rushed to the hotel. The moment they entered, Yun Tianyu started looking around. This hotel was not ordinary rundown. This production team was really stingy. She explained that the production team was controlling the budget, so they did not stay in a high-end hotel. Yun Tianyu did not show it on his face, but he was doubtful inside. Did he not invest a sum of money? Tens of millions. Did a dog eat it? Excluding the remuneration of the stars, the cost of a youth movie was very low compared to those commercial blockbusters that required special effects. Moreover, Leji was not the only investor. Huanyu had other investors, plus advertising placements, yet they were still staying in such a shabby hotel? Or could it be that the money he had invested had gone missing? She walked to the front desk and saw that the receptionist had already fallen asleep. She called out a few times, but there was no response. Yu walked over and kicked a stool. The receptionist woke up with a start. Looking around, he saw a handsome little boy standing in front of him, looking at him with disdain. Immediately, he said angrily, Where did this kid come from? Auntie, are you awake? Yu said coldly, but his words were shocking. The young 29-year-old receptionist was petrified when she heard him call her auntie. She was dumbfounded by his simple and crude method. This child, who did he look like? Right, she had just thought of a question that needed to be investigated. If this was really Xiaxia's child, then who was the father of this child? She kept feeling that when she saw his face, a vague image of a man's face suddenly appeared in her mind, but she couldn't remember who it was. Now is not the time to pursue this matter. Chapter 826. She then asked, "Receptionist, where is the hotel surveillance room? Can we take a look at the footage?" The receptionist was stunned. She then yawned and sized her up warily. "You are?" "I'm from the production team of The Green Apple. Our production team has booked 10 rooms in this hotel." The receptionist was a little stunned. "I've just been transferred here not long ago. I heard that a production team has booked this hotel, but why do you want to see the footage?" "It's an emergency, of course. An artiste from the production team went missing after entering the hotel. Her phone can't be reached and she disappeared after entering the hotel, so we want to take a look at the footage." The receptionist rubbed her sleepy eyes and apologized. "I'm sorry. If someone from the production team goes missing, shouldn't we call the police directly?" "Call the police?" "That's right. May I ask how long has she been missing?" "Since 10 o'clock until now." "Call the police, then." Yu said, "Even if we call the police, we'll only take a statement and file the case 48 hours later." She nervously said, "Actually, given the current situation, we don't need the police to make an appearance. We just need to know where she went after entering the hotel." "It's like this." The receptionist explained seriously with a frown. "If the police don't make an appearance, we don't have the right to access the footage," the receptionist said truthfully. "Why?" "We don't have the authority," the receptionist said. "Some time ago, a client's laptop and some belongings were stolen from the hotel. He also requested for the footage to be removed. In the end, the police had to intervene to get the footage." Yu furrowed his brows. This hotel's service attitude was really worrisome. Mu Shi had already gone to the side to call the police. In the end, the police replied that there were not many officers on night duty at the police station. 2 of them were taking statements and could not respond to the call in time. They also said that if the person was missing, it was recommended to call the police 12 hours later or wait until after 8 a.m. for the police to send someone to understand the situation. After hanging up the call, Yu asked about the situation, and she told him the truth. What should we do? She asked anxiously, subconsciously asking for his opinion. Even she did not realize that an adult like her was seriously asking a child for advice. Yu's pink lips slightly pursed. Then, he thought of something and took out his phone to dial a number. The phone rang for a long time before it was picked up. He said, "Daddy, I'm at Hao Tai Hotel now. There's an emergency. Come over." Mu Shi stared dumbfoundedly at him as he calmly hung up the phone. Her mind was in a mess. She could see the anxiety and nervousness in the child's eyes. Even though he was anxious, the calmness he showed was admirable. 10 minutes later, a sports car stopped at the entrance of the hotel. When the slender and handsome man appeared at the entrance, she was stunned. Only then did she realize why this child's appearance was so familiar. Mu Shi's lips twitched as she sized up the father-son pair in a daze. The father of this child was actually the crown prince of the Mu clan, Wuxia. She suddenly understood the killing intent and anger in his eyes when he saw Yun Shishir being bullied and slapped by Yan Bingqing. Chapter 827. Mu Shi was still in a state of confusion. Wuxia walked in and saw the little lad standing at the front desk. He walked over to carry him and asked him what had happened. The receptionist stared at the handsome man in front of her with her mouth agape. Even though Wuxia had rushed out in a hurry and was only wearing a casual shirt, she could still feel his innate elegance and nobility. Come to think of it, this man's identity must be either rich or noble, with an extraordinary background. He was tall and had an extraordinary aura. Just by standing there, his aura permeated every inch of the room, making the large space seem extremely narrow and small. While Mu Shi was still in a daze, Yu had already recounted what had happened to him in a very short time. Wuxia's eyes turned cold. When did she disappear? Yu said, "Mommy's last reply was at 10:12 p.m. When I called her at 10:30 p.m., I couldn't get through." He could not contact Yun Shishir, so he rummaged through the house and found Yun Shishir's and Qin Zhou's name cards. He first called Qin Zhou's number, but it was switched off. He then called Mu Shi's number, which led to the subsequent incident. Yu continued, "Now, I mainly want to see the hotel's CCTV, but the receptionist said that only the police have the authority to access the CCTV." Wuxia's cold gaze landed on the receptionist. The receptionist trembled under his glare and hurriedly explained, "Sir, this is the hotel's rule. I really can't make the decision. If you're not the police, you can't access the CCTV. Have you called the police?" "Yes, but the police said that they will only arrive in the morning." Wuxia narrowed his eyes and carried Yu to a corner. He made a call and gave a few brief instructions. She did not know what he said, but soon, 3 police cars arrived in a hurry. What happened next left her dumbfounded. 4 to 5 men in police uniforms alighted. It was the police chief, Chen Wei, who had hurriedly led a team here. When he walked through the door, he saw a tall man standing in the hall. He immediately bowed and walked forward with a flattering and respectful smile on his face. It was worlds apart from Mu Shi's impression of a policeman who did not like to smile. Chen Wei walked up to Wuxia and bowed slightly, saying in an extremely respectful tone, "Hello, CEO Mu." "Hello. I didn't know it was you, so I've neglected you. Please don't take it to heart." Wuxia remained expressionless and did not speak. "Son. Is." Wuxia did not fall for his trick, though. His voice was so cold that it made one's scalp tingle. "I think we can skip the pleasantries. Business is more important, isn't it?" This time, it was cold, dignified, and extremely intimidating. He stood there without any expression on his face, but he still exuded an aura of authority. Muyaja's name was known by everyone in the capital. It was just that very few people had the honor of seeing his face in person. This was Chen Wei's first time seeing him. Previously, he had only heard of his name. Now that he saw him in person, he was greatly shocked. Tall, handsome, and dignified, just like the rumors said, he was a dragon among men. Chapter 828. Muyaja said, I want to take a look at this hotel's CCTV, but the hotel said that they don't have the authority to do so without the involvement of the police. Chen Wei nodded repeatedly. Sir, you want to take a look at the CCTV, right? Leave it to me, I'll arrange it right away. With that, he straightened his face and walked to the front desk, putting on a dignified look that a bureau chief should have. Mu Shi, who was standing at the side, could not help but feel a little depressed. It was no wonder that people were so unscrupulous when it came to power and fame. Thinking about it, she had stood before the front desk and pleaded with them in every possible way, but the receptionist had rejected her several times. She even called the police, but no one came. What about now? To put it bluntly, it was just that she did not have enough face. At this time, the receptionist had already called the lobby manager on duty and invited him over. With the bureau chief here, the rest of the matter was naturally much easier to handle. The CCTV room was on the second floor, so a group of people crowded around Muyaja as they walked to the elevator. When they passed by the elevator, the receptionist saw that there was no response from one of the elevators and muttered, "Is this elevator broken? Broken? Why is it broken?" The lobby manager's face turned ugly. He immediately went forward to test it, and it was indeed broken. Get someone to fix it this morning. Yu frowned and suddenly asked, could it be that Mommy is trapped in the elevator? Mu Shi was startled and was stunned. That seemed to be a possibility. Think about it, Mommy's phone can't be reached no matter what. Usually, there's no signal only in the elevator. Yu calmly analyzed the situation. At the side, the lobby manager's face turned ugly. How is that possible? If someone is trapped in the elevator, there are people on duty 24 hours a day in the CCTV room. They'll definitely discover it immediately. Maybe the person on duty in the CCTV room is dozing off like the receptionist. Yu retorted. The receptionist blushed. The lobby manager glared at her fiercely but still tried to salvage the situation. That can't be. Let's go to the CCTV room to take a look, we'll know. However, when the group reached the CCTV room's entrance, they saw 4 security guards playing cards in a corner with glowing faces. Rather than calling it a game of cards, it was more appropriate to call it gambling. The lobby manager was furious and scolded, "It's working hours now. What are you all doing?" The 4 of them were shocked. When they turned around, they saw the imposing and magnificent group. They stood up trembling with fear and awkwardly tried to smooth things over. The lobby manager still wanted to reprimand him, but Muyaja glanced at him. Chen Wei immediately understood and hurriedly said, "Don't waste time. Finding the person is more important." To the computer room. The computer room was very small and filled with machines. Hence, with Chen Wei and Mu Shi following behind, Muyaja carried Yu in. As soon as she walked in, Yu glanced at the screens and suddenly turned pale with fright. She pointed at one of the screens and said, "It's Mommy." Everyone looked in the direction she was pointing and saw Gu Xingza hugging Yun Shishir in the narrow elevator on the screen. The two were curled up in a corner. Yun Shishir seemed to be in a bad state. Even though the CCTV footage was a little blurry, one could still see her dispirited and listless look. Muyaja's heart skipped a beat. He walked to the front of the CCTV screen and pursed his lips into a cold line. His cold gaze swept behind him. His gaze was cold and intimidating. Chapter 829. Ah. Xingza is here, too. Mu Shi let out a yelp of surprise and went over to take a look. She, too, saw Yun Shishir's body curled up in the blanket as she shivered. Her heart ached for her. Oh, gosh. She got caught in the rain and was trapped in the elevator for so long. I wonder if she'll catch a cold. With that, she glared at the lobby manager angrily. Tears were about to fall from her eyes. What's wrong with your hotel? The front desk is dozing off, and there's no one watching over the surveillance room. Even the security guards are playing cards. She's been trapped in the elevator for so long and you don't even know. If anything happens to her, can you bear the responsibility? I'm sorry. I'm sorry. The lobby manager apologized profusely, full of regret. Wuxia ordered, "What are you waiting for? Hurry and contact the rescue team." Yes, sir. The lobby manager hurriedly contacted the rescue team. Yu Yu's little hand touched the screen. The love in her eyes was almost overflowing. Mommy, Wuxia was still angry. He stood in front of the surveillance screen and watched Gu Xingze hugging Yun Shishir tightly. His eyes suddenly narrowed dangerously. She was good at reading people's expressions. Seeing the coldness on his face, she immediately explained, Xingze must be afraid that Shishir will catch a cold, so he's hugging her. It's useless to say all this now. Saving people is more important. Yu Yu calmly said from the side. She was secretly surprised and could not help but be impressed by this child's maturity and composure. By the time the rescue team and the fire department arrived, it was already dawn. The ambulance also hurried over. However, it was unknown who leaked the news, but the media caught wind of it. When they heard that Gu Xingze and Yun Shishir were trapped in the elevator, they all squatted at the hotel's entrance to create headlines. Chen Wei immediately called for the police to prevent these reporters from interfering with the rescue. The maintenance staff of the elevator began to investigate the location of the elevator. The conclusion was that the elevator did not stop at the flat floor, but at the bottom. Wuxia and the rest stayed in the surveillance room to check on the people's condition while the rescue team went to basement 3. When the elevator door opened, Shi hurriedly called out, Xingze, Shishir, are you guys there? Inside the elevator, Gu Xingze heard Shi's call and immediately responded, here. Yun Shishir, on the other hand, had a high fever and was unconscious. She did not have any reaction. We're already thinking of a way to get you out. Xingze, Shishir, how are you? Gu Xingze quickly replied, I'm fine, but Shishir has a high fever. Hurry. Shi was stunned and immediately pleaded, please, quickly save him. All right. Miss, please calm down first. We'll get the equipment immediately. As the elevator stopped at the bottom, they first had to manually turn it to a position roughly parallel to the floor before they could save the people. Shi immediately said, Xingze, Shishir, be careful. We'll be able to get you out soon. Okay. Gu Xingze immediately patted Yun Shishir's cheek gently and said, Shishir, wake up. Wake up, we'll be able to get out soon. Emicham, Gu Xingze could not help but hug her tighter. He gently planted an encouraging kiss on her forehead, raised his face, closed his eyes, and took a deep breath. Chapter 8:30. In the elevator room, 2 maintenance workers were setting up the winch mechanism to prevent the elevator from moving too quickly or accidentally when the brakes were released. The other used a mechanical method to loosen and tighten the brakes. When the brakes were released, the other 2 used their strength to pull the winch mechanism to slowly move the elevator upward. The elevator shook uneasily as the lights flickered. Yun Shishir curled her body even tighter. The excessive shaking made her headache worse and made her dizzy. Every time there was a violent shaking, there would be a dead silence. Then, there would be another tremor. In the control room, Yu Yu was also looking at the scene on the screen anxiously. He suddenly raised his head and said to Wuxia, Daddy, let's go to basement 3. Mommy doesn't seem to be feeling well. I'm worried. Okay. Wuxia carried Yun Tianyu to basement 3. However, when they arrived, they did not see the medical team. Yu Yu asked, and Shi immediately said, I'll go take a look. Not long after, she hurried back and said, the entrance is surrounded by reporters. The ambulance is blocked by a human wall, so it can't enter. Chief Chen has already sent more people over. Reporters? Wuxia knitted his brows in displeasure. Mu, she said indignantly, yes. I don't know who leaked the news, but when the reporters heard that Gu Xingze and Yun Shishir were trapped in the elevator, they all rushed over to get a scoop. Yu also frowned and asked, where's the police? Mu, she said anxiously, there are too many reporters. Various media outlets have sent many people to snatch the news and report, so there's not enough police. On the other end, the elevator maintenance workers' walkie-talkie reminded them, soon, soon, soon. Be careful. A group of people gathered around the elevator. Then, they heard a quang, and the elevator made a deep sound. The walkie-talkie said, it's in place. When the rescue team opened the elevator door, they saw Gu Xingze hugging Yun Shishir in the corner of the elevator. When he heard the commotion, he looked up and bumped into Wuxia. He was slightly stunned, but in the time he was in a daze, Wuxia had already strode into the elevator, picked up Yun Shishir from his arms, and left without looking back. Yu followed closely beside him and couldn't help but stand on her tiptoes to check on Yun Shishir's condition. Her small hand gently held her mother's hand, and her delicate eyebrows suddenly furrowed. Mommy has a high fever. Wuxia lowered his head and pressed his forehead against hers. Feeling the heat from her forehead, a trace of uneasiness appeared on his face. She glanced at Yun Shishir and then at Gu Xingze. She hurried in to help him up. Gu Xingze slightly dodged her attack. She froze in midair. She suddenly remembered that Xingze seemed to have a serious obsession with cleanliness and did not like excessive contact with others. At the thought of this, she looked slightly embarrassed and smiled with concern. Xingze, are you all right? Gu Xingze slowly stood up, but he had been squatting for too long. When he stood up, his body swayed slightly and he felt a little dizzy. He wanted to chase after Yun Shishir to check on her condition, but Wuxia had already carried Yun Shishir away in a hurry. When he appeared at the door with Yun Shishir in his arms, it caused a huge commotion. Chapter 831. Oh my God. Isn't that the CEO of Mu Group, Wuxia? What is he doing here? He's hugging Yun Shishir. And they look so intimate. This scene could not help but make people's imaginations run wild. The reporters discussed animatedly. I heard that Huanyu banned Yan Bingqing some time ago. Rumor has it that Yan Bingqing bullied a newcomer in the crew. The newcomer in the crew of The Green Apple is Yun Shishir, who is a little more famous. Someone whispered, isn't there a rumor that Yun Shishir was able to sign a contract with Huanyu's headquarters right after her debut because she has a sugar daddy backing her? Could this sugar daddy be Wuxia? It's very possible. The camera flashes were overwhelmed. The reporters scrambled to squeeze at the door and extended their microphones, asking loudly, CEO Mu, CEO Mu. Look here. I'm a reporter from Phoenix News Agency. May I know what relationship you have with Yun Shishir? What relationship do you have? CEO Mu, there are rumors that you have a close relationship with Yun Shishir. May I know what relationship you have with Shishir? Countless microphones were extended in front of him. The flashing lights were blinding. Wuxia hugged Yun Shishir expressionlessly. He completely ignored these aggressive interviews. How could the reporters let go of such an exciting piece of news? They stubbornly followed behind him. Some even formed a human wall in front of him, blocking his way. Wuxia narrowed his eyes. His handsome face was extremely gloomy, and he was about to explode. Yun Shishir nestled in his arms. There was a loud noise in her ears. So noisy, the flashing lights were so glaring that it made her eyes hurt. Wuxia lowered his head and saw her slightly uncomfortable expression. His eyes were tinged with coldness and sharpness. He swept his gaze across the surroundings. Suddenly, a biting cold aura spread out and froze everything. However, these professional reporters were not to be trifled with. They were not afraid of his terrifying expression at all and still kept moving forward. Yu grabbed onto Wuxia's sleeves tightly, but she was still squeezed by the crowd. He had never seen such a congested scene. There were so many people in front and behind that not even a drop of water could trickle through. Questions came one after another, leaving no time for anyone to digest and understand the situation. Mushi had also arrived, but when she saw the crowd at the entrance, she was stunned. She subconsciously put on a professional smile and said, "Everyone, please don't crowd. Please be careful and don't crowd the entrance, okay? The situation is critical now. Everyone, please make way. Please don't block the entrance, okay?" As soon as he finished speaking, a man in the crowd shouted, "Don't change the subject. Xianxia, please answer me directly. Are you Muyaja's mistress?" The sharp question caused the crowd to quiet down immediately. When Mushi heard this, the smile on her face froze. She stood rooted to the ground for a moment until the smile on her lips gradually turned cold. Yu Yu's little face turned even paler. Even though he was young, he understood what the word mistress meant. Kept mistress? This was a blatant insult. The harsh question caused an uproar in the crowd. That man continued to press on. "Chairman Mu, does silence mean that you're admitting it?" After a moment of silence, the crowd burst into another round of questioning. Chapter 832. If the rumors are true, does that mean that you're a third party in your relationship with Muyaja? Xianxia, I heard that you were adopted from Xingda Welfare Institute. Is that true? Anne. The director of Xingda Welfare Institute, Luo Hanjin, was arrested for child molestation. The news said that many children in the Welfare Institute were victims. Have you ever been sexually assaulted? Xianxia's eyelashes trembled slightly. She looked down and closed her eyes tightly. Her lips were stiff and her face was pale. The harsh voices echoed in her ears. The unbearable questions were asked again and again, but they were so sharp in the noisy world. Yu Yu stood there in a daze as if she had been petrified. She did not move. The flashes kept flashing in front of her eyes. Gradually, her vision went blank. Mommy is not a third party. What are these people talking about? Muyaja stood silently at the same spot and did not move an inch. His cold gaze swept across the crowd as his fists clenched tightly. Seeing that he had stopped in his tracks, the reporters swarmed forward and put their microphones to his mouth. "Daddy." Yu Yu opened her mouth, but no sound came out. Her weak voice was instantly drowned out by the reporters' questions. Muyaja suddenly reached out and held her little hand tightly. Yu Yu felt the warmth from his palm and felt inexplicably calm. Soon, 3 to 5 police cars rushed over. Chief Chen led the team to maintain order at the scene. The medical staff of the ambulance also rushed over. However, the reporters were blocked at the entrance like a wall and could not break through the crowd. Gu Xingza walked to the door and saw the scene in front of him. His face froze. He looked at the crowd at the entrance expressionlessly and narrowed his eyes. Seeing that Gu Xingza had also appeared, the reporters went crazy. The reporters rushed forward and the flashes became more intense. The sound of the film rolling could be heard continuously. "Xingza, Xingza. Look over here. Please share your views on Xianxia, Xingza. Look here, I'm a reporter from Starlight Daily." Muyaja suddenly said, "Scram." Even though his cold voice was deep, it was like an imperial edict that didn't allow anyone to question it. His gaze swept across the crowd. The coldness in his eyes caused people's hearts to palpitate. Some of the reporters who were close to him could not help but take a few steps back because of the murderous aura emanating from his body. Muyaja lifted his foot and was about to walk towards the ambulance when the reporter who had asked the sharp question earlier did not fear the cold aura he exuded. He squeezed to the front with no regard for his own safety and blocked his path with his camera. He extended his microphone. "Chairman Mu, you haven't answered my question yet." Muyaja suddenly stopped and glanced at him dangerously from the corner of his eyes. His lips curled into a cold and mocking smile. When the reporter saw that he had stopped, he quickly moved the microphone closer and asked a series of questions. "Please give a direct answer. May I ask if Xianxia is your mistress?" Before he could finish his sentence, Muyaja kicked the reporter away expressionlessly. The latter was caught off guard and stumbled a few steps back before falling to the ground. The crowd was in an uproar. Mu Yaja hit someone. Chapter 833. The flashing lights instantly drowned them out. A reporter from a famous entertainment newspaper squeezed in front of them, raised his Canon-like DSLR, and started taking pictures of them. Mu Yaja turned his face dangerously. With a frown, he punched the camera lens and smashed it into pieces. He looked up expressionlessly. His aura was as cold as ice as he said coldly, "Shut up." The atmosphere quieted down. An eerie silence. Everyone froze on the spot. Time seemed to have stopped. Mu Yaja said in a low voice, "Move aside." As soon as he said that, everyone looked at each other and cowered. No one dared to step forward and obediently opened up a path. Xianxia was hurriedly sent to the hospital. Preliminary diagnosis showed that she did not have any external injuries. However, due to the air conditioning and the fact that she did not change out of her soaked clothes in time, the cold air invaded her body and caused her to have a high fever of 40 degrees Celsius. If it had been any later, she would have been in danger of contracting pneumonia. After sending Xianxia to the hospital, Mu Yaja asked Yu and Mu Shi to stay in the ward to look after her and left in a hurry. The reporters who had surrounded the hotel entrance were also brought back to the police station and investigated for obstructing public order. With such a thing happening, Mu Yaja naturally would not let them off easily. These motley crew were all dismissed and blacklisted, unable to work in the media industry for the rest of their lives. Mu Yaja also got his men to delete all the photos taken. The results of the investigation showed that these reporters were a motley crew from some third-rate media companies who would do anything to get the news. It was said that the hotel staff leaked the news. They rushed over when they heard the news and squatted at the hotel entrance. Soon, the hotel staff who leaked the news was also found out. It was the hotel receptionist. The police came to take the receptionist away for investigation. Although Mu Yaja suppressed it in time, the news of Xianxia interfering in a rich family's marriage spread like wildfire on the internet. The Water Army started spreading rumors on Weibo. The mysterious financier behind Xianxia lifts his veil. It's Mu Yaja, the CEO of Dishing Financial Group. Explosion. The crown prince of the Mu Group is angry because of a woman. Xianxia interferes with the marriage of a rich family. Is the rising star of the film industry the third wheel? Yan Bingqing was banned by Huanyu because she offended Xianxia. The reason was that Xianxia was the mistress of the Mu Group's crown prince. Xianxia actually had an illegitimate child with Mu Yaja? Soon, these scandals were all over the internet. However, because most of the rumors seemed to be groundless, there was no real evidence to verify this matter. Therefore, netizens could only wait and see about this matter. Many people ran to Xianxia's Weibo, wanting to leave comments for her. However, Mu Shi had foresight and blocked the comments section of Weibo at an extremely fast speed. However, she did not expect her actions to make it even more conspicuous. In an instant, the news of Xianxia interfering in a rich family's marriage spread on the internet. It caused a storm and was confusing for a moment. Many netizens sighed with emotion. This Xianxia, who had just debuted, seemed to have the effect of being a hot topic and had repeatedly topped the list of hot topics. Chapter 834. Yu scrolled through Weibo and saw that the rumors were spreading everywhere. He vaguely smelled something fishy. He felt that there was something fishy about this matter. Huanyu Entertainment had a monopoly on the media industry. However, the topics on Weibo were mostly directed toward Xianxia and Mu Yaja. Huanyu Entertainment did not even make a move. This was indeed a little abnormal. Not to mention Mu Yaja, even Yun Tianyu could sense that something was fishy. After Mu Yaja was done with his work, he received a call from Mu Sheng, asking him to hurry back to the Mu residence. He righteously said that he had an urgent matter to announce. He did not need to think to know what it was. Mu Yaja did not care about it at all. Xianxia was still in the hospital, and he did not know what was going on. No matter how important the matter was, he had to put it aside first. Hence, after leaving the police station, he drove to the hospital. When he entered the ward, Yu was guarding by the bed. Xianxia was asleep. She had changed into a clean hospital gown with the help of the nurse. At the same time, she used a hot towel to wipe her body. The 4 drip was already changed to the 4th bottle. Seeing him walk in, Yu Yu's face showed dissatisfaction. Wuxia exchanged glances with him and easily caught the displeasure in his eyes. Without guessing, he knew what the little guy was unhappy about. He was different from other children and matured at a young age. Hence, when he was surrounded by reporters at the hotel entrance, those sharp words hurt both Yun Shishir and him. "You're here." Yu Yu glanced at him, his expression a little cold. "Have you settled everything?" "Yes, I have." Wuxia walked to the bedside and reached out to check the temperature of her forehead. After 3 bottles of 4 drip, the temperature had dropped, but the fever was still not completely gone. Yu Yu did not intend to let that interrogation go just like that. He suddenly pulled his hand and led him to the balcony. Closing the door and leaning against it, the little guy's face was cold, and there was no need to hide the anger in his eyes. "What happened today made me very unhappy." With a short opening speech, the little guy went straight to the point. "I know that some media reporters are very unscrupulous and that we shouldn't bother with their sharp and tricky questions. I also know that Mommy will have to face some rumors when she enters the entertainment industry, which is a place of trouble. This is not what I want to see, though." "Okay." Wuxia waited for him to continue. His son was young, but the words he spoke were much more mature than an adult. "I heard someone asking you if Mommy is your mistress. I don't want to hear such a question a second time. Do you understand?" After a pause, Yu Yu expressed his attitude. "If there's a next time, even if you don't do anything, I won't let it go." "What will you do?" "You don't have to ask me what I will do. I won't interfere with you, and you don't have to ask me about my decision. I only want to tell you that I will only do what I think is right." His young voice revealed his determination. In his heart, he was thinking that if there were such unbearable rumors in the future, he might take action and get rid of Mu Wanru. Chapter 835. Making a person disappear from this world without leaving a trace was not a difficult task for him. Wuxia saw some clues in his son's eyes. It seemed that his son had some tricks up his sleeve. However, as a father, he naturally didn't want his son's hands to be stained with those unclean things. "So," he said, "give me a month." "A month?" Yu Yu was obviously unhappy with the number. He shook his finger and said, "I'll only give you half a month." Wuxia thought for a moment and said, "Okay." Yu Yu said, "Daddy, don't let me down. After all, you're my daddy. You're an excellent man. Don't let my mommy get hurt again." Wuxia reached out and rubbed his son's hair. Then, he heard the little boy say seriously, "I know why you haven't done anything yet." "What do you mean?" "You've seen through Mu Wanru's identity long ago. I know why you haven't done anything about it yet." "Oh?" Wuxia was surprised. He squatted down and looked into his son's eyes. "Tell me, what's the reason?" "You're waiting for the right time." Yu Yu pointed out briefly, "Mu Wanru is so weak that she can't even withstand a single blow. She must have some power behind her since she could stay in the Mu family for so long. You haven't done anything yet because you want to lure the snake out of its hole. Isn't that right?" Wuxia's face froze. He said, "The Mu family is a big family. Many people in the family are eyeing the position of the successor. Naturally, you have to clean up those who want to seize power to stabilize the family's morale." He changed the topic, "But, how do you know?" "I'm not telling you." Yu Yu kept him in suspense. He looked at the sky and said, "I'll only tell you that I've planted spies in the Mu family." Wuxia narrowed his eyes slightly. "Spies?" "Yes." "How long ago?" "It wasn't long ago, but we managed to obtain some reliable information. I only want to remind you that Mu Wanru and that person have already made their move. Over the past few days, Mu Wanru has taken advantage of her position to plant that person's men into the consortium's headquarters. I'm afraid she's going to do something secretly." Mu Wanru was the human resources director of Dishing Financial Group. Mu Yaja glanced at him. This brat had some ability. Daddy, as far as I'm concerned, the Mu family is nothing in my eyes. In my eyes, whether it's power or wealth, it's meaningless if I can't protect the people I love. In other words, if you let mommy get hurt, I won't forgive you no matter how powerful you are or how wealthy you are. Yin Tianyu did not care about a mere Mu family. Mu Yaja didn't care about it either. His current status and power were not entirely dependent on the Mu family. Outside of the Mu family, he already had his own empire, one that was on par with the Mu family's. In other words, he did not care about the inheritance of the Mu family that Mu Xing mentioned. He originally wanted to wait until Grandpa Mu breathed his last before eliminating the remaining members of the Mu family one by one. In the past few days, that person had indeed lost his cool and was slowly giving himself away. Alas, that person was a sly old fox who hid his true colors well. It seemed that he had to hasten his actions. Didn't you give me half a month's time? Mu Yaja said, it's a deal, then. Chapter 836. Mu Yaja narrowed his eyes. His admiration for his son grew. It was as if the student had surpassed the master. This son of his would definitely be very capable in the future. He was so young, yet his mind was so complicated. He even knew how to play the tricks of a big family. In fact, this feeling was very unpleasant. His son seemed to know everything about him, but he couldn't figure out what kind of power was behind his precious son. Stay at the hospital and accompany mommy. I'm going back to the Mu residence. Mu Yaja gave a few more instructions before leaving in a hurry. On the way back, he received a call from his grandfather, urging him to go home. He said that he had something important to announce. The important matter he was talking about was probably his engagement with Mu Wanru. These few days, the Muse had received news that Mu Xing's health was deteriorating, and his situation was getting worse. It was as if he knew that he did not have much time left and was about to die. He started to worry about his marriage with Mu Wanru and started to make arrangements for it. It was said that Grandpa Mu planned to hold the wedding within this month as soon as possible. He did not return to the Mu residence these few days, and Xiao Yichen was arranged to stay in the condominium beside Dishing Financial Group. When he returned to the Mu residence, Mu Xing saw him without batting an eyelid. Mu Wanru, on the other hand, was beside Mu Xing. She kept her head down and secretly observed his expression from time to time. Mu Yaja glanced at her and happened to catch her secretly looking at him. His gaze was cold and deep. It was as sharp as a sword covered in snow, and it made her panic. She felt that no matter what she did, she could not escape his eyes. When Mu Yaja sat down, Grandpa Mu did not make any small talk. Instead, he went straight to the point. When do you plan to set the wedding date? His question left no room for negotiation. Before Mu Yaja could say anything, Grandpa Mu said unhappily, Wanru is pregnant. Don't delay the wedding any longer. When the dust settles on your wedding date, Grandpa's heart will also be at ease. Aja, I don't care what you do outside, but you're not young anymore. It's time to settle down and start a family. Grandpa's only wish now is to see you marry Wanru. Only then can Wanru truly be considered a member of the Mu family. If Grandpa's body allows it, I'd like to see your child being born again. You've never disobeyed your grandfather. Grandfather's body may not be able to hold on for much longer. Stop fooling around. At least, fulfill Grandfather's last wish. His words were sincere. For him, Mu Wanru was only a member of the Mu family when she married into the family. He wholeheartedly wanted to give Mu Wanru a proper status as the young mistress of the Mu family. Mu Yaja looked up, his expression as cold as ice. Seeing his cold expression, Mu Xing suddenly added, if you really like that woman, it's not impossible. You can marry her as a concubine, too. That woman is called Yinshishi. Mu Xing's eyes narrowed slightly. She should be a woman with some tricks up her sleeve. That was what he thought. After all, Mu Yaja had never had a woman by his side all these years. This lad seemed to be very cold when it came to women. However, Yinshishi was the first woman by his side. Chapter 837. This Xianxia was definitely not simple. Mu Wanru, who was standing at the side, looked surprised. Mu Xing actually relented and allowed Xianxia to marry into the family as a concubine? She found it hard to believe. However, in fact, in the Mu family, only the head of the Mu family had such a privilege. Take Mu Xing, for example. Other than his first wife, there were also his second and third wives. Although the three women were constantly fighting under the same roof, they appeared to be very harmonious on the surface. Other than that, Mu Xing also had a few concubines outside. In ancient times, a concubine was a concubine. In fact, as a concubine in the Mu family, other than having a lower status than the first wife, there was no difference in other aspects. The only difference was that the few wives were legally married, while the concubines could not hold a wedding ceremony and could only marry into the family directly. After all, monogamy was now practiced. Even if the Mu family was rich for 100 years, some things could not be too ostentatious. However, allowing Xianxia to marry into the family as a concubine was already the biggest concession he could make. After all, Grandpa Mu hated Xianxia from the bottom of his heart. After all, for so long, no one could make Mu Yaja go against his wishes. Xianxia, however, did it. Naturally, he hated her to the core. Mu Yaja merely chuckled when he heard that. His eyes were calm and unruffled, and no one knew what he meant by that. However, since Mu Xing had already made his intentions clear, he intended to make a proper decision on this matter this time. Grandpa, I remember that when I was still young, you arranged a marriage for me, right? Mu Yaja looked at him as he said this. His interruption was so sudden that Mu Xing did not react in time. Don't you remember? Mu Yaja paused for a moment before saying casually, although I was young, my mother told me that you arranged a marriage for me. I heard that the girl is from the capital's Song family. Song family? Mu Wanru obviously did not know about this. After all, this happened before she was taken into the Mu family. Mu Yaja said again. The Mu family in the capital is a prestigious family. But after Mu Wanru returned to the Mu family, you didn't hesitate to offend the Song family's old man and canceled the engagement. Growing up in a wealthy family, marriage had been reduced to a bargaining chip. It was not something that they could decide. For example, the marriage between a father and a mother had nothing to do with romance or love. It was just a marriage between two families. The marriage between the two was nothing more than a paper deal between two wealthy families. What puzzled him, however, was that, after Mu Wanru's return, Mu Xing resolutely called off the engagement between the two families. This made Old Master Song very embarrassed. Mu Xing's face froze, but he did not say a word. Indeed, this did not seem to be his character. According to him, marriage was just a bargaining chip in exchange for fame, wealth, status, and power. Mu Wanru's mother, Mu Qingqing, was just a singer. She did not have any maternal power to speak of. Mu Xing's insistence on letting Mu Wanru marry into the Mu family, even making her the main wife, was indeed beyond everyone's expectations. Mu Yaja's eyes turned cold. You keep saying that you want me to fulfill your wish. I just want to ask you what wish Grandpa wants me to fulfill by marrying this woman. Mu Xing sealed his mouth tightly, unable to say a word. Chapter 838. This grandfather of his was in his twilight years and did not have many days left to live. As he grew older, he no longer had that much ambition. Before he died, he only wanted to fulfill his unspoken wish. That was his unfulfilled wish for Mu Qingqing. His love for her was no longer in the category of adoptive father and daughter. There was even a time when he wanted to marry her as his wife, but she already had someone else in her heart. Alas, he had always been very possessive. How could he tolerate the woman he loved having someone else in her heart? Hence, there was a time when he wanted to force her to submit. Although she was a singer, her character was chaste, so how could she submit? In the end, she could not stand his perverted possessiveness and fled the Mu family with her pregnancy. The Mu sent out countless men to search for her. They could not wait to turn the capital upside down to catch her. However, when they finally found her, she was already a cold corpse. This car accident was laughable. If she had not been trying to avoid the men sent by the muse, how could she have gotten into an accident? His heart was filled with self-blame and guilt. Feeling as if a knife was being twisted in his heart, he fell ill and was bedridden for a long time. In the end, this wish fell on Mu Wanru. Even if he could not marry her, at least he could let her daughter marry into the Mu family. This could be considered as fulfilling his wish. It was because of his perverted obsession that Mu Yaja did not bring Xianxia back to the Mu family. He dared not imagine what crazy things his grandfather would do if he saw Xianxia, who looked almost identical to her. Moreover, the Mu family was in turmoil with constant infighting. He had to tread carefully to get to where he was today. Therefore, he had been waiting for an opportunity to personally wipe out the traitors within the Mu family. Before that, he would not let Xianxia take even half a step into this tiger's den. After a long silence, just as he was about to speak, Mu Yaja suddenly asked, "Grandpa, are you determined to make me marry this woman?" Mu Wanru bit her lower lip and gently rested her hand on his shoulder. Mu Xing looked up and placed his withered hand on the back of her hand. He looked at Mu Yaja and said, "Grandpa, haven't you already taken a step back? If you have any woman you like outside, you can marry her and make her your concubine. As for Wanru, she must be the young madam of the Mu family." There is no room for discussion on this point. Since Grandpa said so, Mu Yaja suddenly said, "Then I'll do as grandfather says." His words gave the old man a shock. He originally thought that his grandson would still resist him, but he didn't expect him to agree so quickly. He had resisted so fiercely earlier. But now, instead, Mu Xing felt that Mu Yaja's docile attitude was somewhat abnormal. Mu Wanru was also stunned. She did not expect Mu Yaja to agree to marry her. Mu Yaja did not look at them. He just casually took out a cigarette box and lit it. "Since it's Grandpa's wish, I won't fight for it anymore. Besides, you're already old. My only wish is for my marriage to be settled according to your wishes. Since Grandpa likes her, I'll marry her." Mu Sheng and Mu Wanru were completely dumbfounded. Mu Wanru, in particular, had a comical expression on her face. Chapter 839. The old man was the first to react. You're really willing to marry Wanru? There's no need to doubt my words." Mu Yaja pursed his thin lips. "Grandpa, you know that I'll do what I say." He was a man of his word. This was his grandson's attitude towards the world. He had no doubts about this. "Great." Overjoyed, he immediately said, "That's great. Since you're willing to marry Wanru, Grandpa is naturally happy." With that, he held Mu Wanru's hand tightly, unable to hide the joy on his face. "That's great. I'm afraid that the Mu family will have double happiness in no time. Since that's the case, I'll quickly get someone to make arrangements. The wedding can't be delayed any longer. We should at least announce it to the media first. Then, Grandpa will get someone to pick an auspicious date for your wedding." According to tradition, after the wedding date was set, the Mu family would hold a grand press conference and invite business and political celebrities, aristocrats, and various media outlets to witness it. After that, they would hold the grand wedding of the century. Compared to his joy, Mu Wanru's smile seemed a little forced. That was because she did not believe that Mu Yaja would really marry her. Ever since she reached an agreement with Mu Yaja that day, she no longer had any illusions about marrying him. Mu Lianjue had promised her an inexhaustible supply of wealth after the deed was done. Hence, she was willing to follow his instructions. Not only did she plant his men in Dixing's headquarters, she even poisoned Mu Xing's medicine. In the entire Mu family, she was the only one who could do this. Now, however, Mu Yaja actually said that he was willing to marry her. Didn't that mean that she would become the young mistress of the Mu family soon? Everything seemed like a dream. It was unbelievably beautiful. Why would Mu Yaja be willing, though? Not to mention other things, just the fact that she was pregnant and the child in her belly was not his, yet he was still willing to marry her? This was the greatest humiliation to a man. "Grandpa, there's one thing you must do, though." Don't forget what you promised me earlier. Mu Yaja's words were concise, but Grandpa Mu understood and nodded. Don't worry. Grandpa will give it to you before the wedding. The Mu family's power. Although Mu Yaja was the heir of the Mu family and had the right to inherit, this power was different from the inheritance. The Mu family's power symbolizes the highest authority. Only the patriarch had the right to do so. Mu Xing had once promised him that if he married Mu Wanru, he would pass the family head position to him. Generally speaking, given Mu Xing's character, he would not hand over the Mu family's authority unless he was on his deathbed. After all, in a family like the Mu clan's power meant supreme power. If one had the Mu clan's power, it meant that the Mu clan had the power to control life and death. Many people coveted it. Think about it, if Mu's families to be Mu's to the family to have the families to be. The family's morale would be unstable, and he would not be able to rest until his death. If it were someone else, he might not agree. Mu Yaja, on the other hand, was his most trusted grandson. Grandpa Sheng, on the other hand, trusted him. Chapter 840. Oh. Although she was unwilling, she could not pry any further from his stern words. After a moment of silence, the old man said, "How about this? I'll announce it on the day you and Wanru get married." Mu Yaja replied, "Since that's the case, I'll go make the arrangements now." Okay. The old man nodded in relief and did not say anything else. Mu Yaja went upstairs. Mu Wanru hurriedly chased after him. Zha! He stopped in his tracks and slowly turned around, only to see her standing behind him bashfully with a complicated expression. She was stammering and hesitating to speak. What's the matter? Mu Yaja, are you really willing to marry me? Mu Wanru asked hesitantly. Her eyes were filled with disbelief and even unconcealable suspicion. Mu Yaja glanced at her, but his eyes were cold and indifferent. Hearing her question, he raised a brow impatiently. Mu Wanru quickly explained, I don't mean anything else. I'm just curious. After all, you said that you won't marry me. It's really surprising that you've changed your mind. What's so surprising about that? Mu Wanru laughed and said, I'm just too happy, so happy that I'm still a little doubtful. I don't believe that you're really willing to marry me. I still feel like I'm living in a dream. Mu Yaja remained silent. Mu Wanru could not help feeling awkward, but she still wanted to clarify this matter. After all, the love she had for Mu Yaja was hard to let go. If you marry me, then what about Yun Shishir? She asked carefully. Mu Yaja coldly replied, You have no right to mention her. Mu Wanru's face was suddenly filled with disappointment. She said in shame, Yes, I know. I know that it's already my greatest honor that you're willing to marry me. Other than that, I won't ask so much from you. But, if you really want to marry me, I swear, I will learn how to be a qualified young mistress of the Mu Jia. But do you really not mind my past? Her mind was in a mess. She always suspected that Mu Yaja didn't marry her for such a simple reason. Therefore, she wanted to find out more about it. After all, Mu Yaja was extremely shrewd. This man's thoughts were unpredictable. She couldn't figure it out no matter how hard she tried. She always felt that his decision wasn't that simple. Mind what? Mu Yaja's cold eyes fell on her body. I married you because grandfather ordered me to. I don't want to disobey. As for the rest, you don't have to ask. Mu Wanru was shocked. Mu Yaja said, Besides, you've always taken good care of Grandpa, no matter how big or small. Since it's Grandpa's wish, then I will comply. You married me, then do you like me? Even if it was just a little bit, it made her so happy that she couldn't control herself. But he coldly asked, What does my marriage with you have to do with whether I like you or not? Mu Wanru choked. I know that you married me because of grandfather's order. It has nothing to do with romance or love. I also know that I let you down. But in the future, I will try my best to play my role. It's good that you know. Mu Yaja finished and turned away. Mu Wanru, on the other hand, stood rooted to the spot. Her heart was in a mess. She went back to her room and sat on the bed, but she felt that her thoughts were in a mess. Chapter 841. Initially, she had been following the man's plan in an orderly manner. Now, however, things seemed to have taken a turn for the worse. Since Mu Yaja was willing to marry her, it meant that she would soon be the real young mistress of the Mu family. This meant that she should be on the same side as Mu Yaja and Mu Lianjue's enemy. Should she still carry out the man's plan, then? Mu Wanru was in a terrible fix from the series of events. On second thought, since Mu Yaja was willing to marry her, she must stand on his side and do her best to protect his position. After all, if Mu Yaja married her, they would share honor and disgrace together. If Mu Yaja lost his position because of Mu Yaja, she would be in deep trouble. Still, she did not know what Mu Yaja was thinking. She felt that this man was unfathomable. Hence, Mu Wanru was a little hesitant. Alas, the Muse were busy preparing for the wedding these few days. On this day, Aaron suddenly found her. The two of them agreed to meet in a secret place. When he saw her, the first thing he said was, "Wanru, come with me. Let's go far away from this troublesome place. Aaron, don't look for me anymore. In the future, we'll return to how we were before. I'm Mu Yaja's fiancé, and you're his assistant." Mu Wanru said coldly. "Fiancé?" He burst into laughter. "Wanru, what are you talking about? Are you talking in your sleep? Fiancé? Do you really think that Mu Yaja will marry you?" Mu Wanru smirked. "Why not? He said that he'll marry me on a date. He's already making arrangements for it." He was stunned. "How is that possible? Why not? He's already promised Grandpa. The entire Mu family is making arrangements to announce our marriage." Mu Wanru could not hide her smugness. Aaron sneered. "Impossible. Nothing is impossible. You're just unwilling to accept it. Do you really think that Mu Yaja is that stupid? Wanru, think about it, does he really intend to marry you? Putting aside your identity, you're pregnant now. You can fool Mu Sheng, but can you fool Mu Yaja? Will he marry a woman who's pregnant with another man's child?" Mu Wanru's heart skipped a beat. "Why not? He's marrying me because he doesn't want to go against Grandpa's order." "Ha! Don't think he's too great," Alan retorted. "He's definitely not a simple man. Wanru, don't let your guard down. Maybe he set a trap for you and is waiting for you to jump into it. The Muse are a dragon's pool and a tiger's den. Mu Yaja has his current status at such a young age. To be able to become an outstanding man in a place like the Muse, you can imagine what he's been through. Do you really think that he's a simple man? In fact, he's more unfathomable than you think." Mu Wanru's heart skipped a beat when she heard that. "Come with me. Running away with me is the best choice for you right now." He extended his hand to her and opened his palm. Mu Wanru was in a daze for a moment and unexpectedly extended her hand to him. Seeing that she seemed to have changed her mind, his face lit up. However, Mu Wanru slapped his hand away harshly. Chapter 842. Alan's face froze. "Why? I won't go with you. Just give up on it." Mu Wanru said, "I believe in Mu Yaja because he does what he says. Since he said that he will marry me, then he will definitely marry me." After that, she was about to leave. However, Alan took a step forward and hugged her tightly. "Don't go," he almost put down all his dignity and hugged Mu Wanru. His whole body was trembling. "Wanru, I really love you. Although I can't give you wealth, I will work hard and use my hands to create a stable life for you. Wanru, I really love you. My heart has never changed. For you, I entered the Mu group. For you, I did so many evil things for you. But now, you want to leave me. Wanru, is your heart so hard? Stop talking. So disgusting." Mu Wanru struggled to get out of his arms. However, Alan hugged her so tightly that she almost suffocated. She screamed hysterically, "Ellen, I can't be with you. I was born as a member of the Mu family and I will die as a ghost of the Mu family. Just give up." Aaron was taken aback. While he was in a daze, Mu Wanru stepped on his foot harshly and left his embrace. She turned around and glared at him coldly and resolutely. "I don't like you at all. I never liked you. I've only been using you from the beginning to the end, do you know? I don't like you at all. Haven't you given up?" After shouting, she tried to calm down the anger in her chest. She tidied herself up and said to him, "Alan, I've kept you until now because I care about your feelings for me. You'd better disappear from my sight now and never appear again. Otherwise, I won't let you go." Her words were unusually ruthless. In other words, if he still did not know his place, she would kill him and get rid of him to prevent future troubles. Alan was shocked by her ruthless warning. He could not help but widen his eyes. "Wanru, why are you so heartless? Since you know I'm heartless, why don't you disappear from my sight?" Okay, I'll disappear." Alan lowered his head in a daze, like an empty puppet. Mu Wanru snorted and walked out of the alley. However, just as he got into the car and started, he still didn't see Alan walk out of the alley. Just as she was feeling suspicious, she suddenly heard a gunshot. Even though the gunshot had been silenced, it was very quiet and there was no one around. Therefore, she immediately caught the faint sound. His heart skipped a few beats. She got out of the car and walked to the entrance of the alley, but what she saw made her heart palpitate. Alan leaned against the rugged wall, his eyes wide open, his face pale, and his weak body slowly slid down the wall. Dark red blood splattered on the wall. At Alan's temple, there was a bloody hole that was gurgling with blood. The man who had just asked her to run away with him had now turned into a cold corpse. One of the men in black put away his gun. Suddenly sensing something, he turned his head and bumped into Mu Wanru head-on. The man in black's face was cold and his eyes were full of murderous intent. "Ah!" Mu Wanru screamed and almost fell to the ground in fright. Chapter 843. Mu Wanru did not know how many red lights she had run along the way. It was only when she reached the city center that she stopped the car by the roadside. The scene she saw earlier gave her a huge shock. She held the steering wheel and clutched her thundering chest, unable to calm down for a long time. What exactly happened just now? She seemed to have seen Aaron being killed. Who was it? What was going on? Mu Wanru found it hard to calm down. Just as she was feeling tense, her phone suddenly rang. Mu Wanru was so shocked by the sudden ringing that she almost lost her soul. After forcing herself to calm down quickly, she picked up the phone with trembling hands. It was an unknown number on the screen. Having just received a huge shock, she could not help feeling jittery. It was only after a long while that she picked up the call. "Hello? It's me." Mu Lianjue's gloomy voice came through. Mu Wanru inexplicably calmed down upon hearing his voice. "Fourth uncle, it's you, Mu Wanru, you're really hopelessly stupid." He suddenly cursed. "That Aaron knows everything about you. He can't be left alive, yet you still let him live." At the mention of Aaron, Mu Wanru was taken aback. She carefully probed, "Did you send someone to kill Aaron just now?" "It's me. Do you think that I'm as stupid as you? How could I leave such a big scourge alive?" He paused. "Not only does he know everything about you, but he's also not smart. If he lets the cat out of the bag and gets caught by Mu Yaja, you'll be finished." Mu Wanru was still of great use to him now, so he must protect this chess piece of Mu Wanru. Mu Wanru, on the other hand, was stunned. It was really him who killed him. She tried hard to maintain a calm expression, but she was shocked once again by his ruthlessness. Suddenly realizing something, she questioned in astonishment, "Fourth uncle, are you following me?" She had purposely chosen a secluded place for her meeting with Aaron, where there was hardly anyone within a few miles. Unless he had sent someone to follow her deliberately, he would not. It was terrifying to think about it. This man was indeed a sly old fox. Him following her clearly showed that he did not trust her. I'm following you. He did not deny it. That's because I'm worried. If anything happens to you, it'll hinder me. Mu Wanru, I'm warning you, if you hinder me in the slightest, I'll get rid of you. Do you understand? Mu Wanru's lips trembled in shock. In the rearview mirror, her face was frighteningly pale. When she thought of Alan's miserable death, she felt an inexplicable sadness and pain in her heart. In fact, she still had some conscience at least. Aaron truly loved her and was even willing to betray Mu Yaja for her. Alan's persistent and solemn words still echoed in her ears, saying that he would take her far away and give her a stable and peaceful life. However, in the blink of an eye, his pitiful look flashed before her eyes. Feeling uncomfortable all over, she covered her mouth in grief. I must speed up my plan. Chapter 844. When this old thing hands over the Mu family's power, you'll still act according to my plan. Do you understand? His tone was firm and did not give her any room to resist. Mu Wanru only replied, I understand. Recalling something, she cautiously asked, Fourth uncle, you promised me that you'll get rid of Yun Shishir and Yun Tianyu. You don't have to ask about this matter. Even if you don't ask, I'll get rid of them. Mu Wanru's heart finally settled at his words. Mu Lianjue gave a few more instructions before hanging up the call. Mu Wanru stared ahead in a daze. Her hand loosened and the phone slipped onto the seat. Now, she suddenly felt a little paranoid. The man's words just now made her hair stand on end. She felt that every passerby in this huge downtown area was someone he had sent to tail her. Mu Wanru gritted her teeth, held the steering wheel, stepped on the accelerator, and sped away. After 2 days of being on the drip, Yun Shishir's fever was almost gone. When she woke up in the morning, Mushi had already prepared porridge and sent it over. Yu Yu was by her bedside. He had been accompanying her in the hospital for the past 2 days. Seeing that she had woken up, he hurried over and placed his small hand on her forehead. When her fever finally subsided, a gratified smile appeared on his face. Mommy, your fever is finally gone. Yun Shishir's lips were dry. She opened her mouth, but a hoarse voice came out. Yu Yu hurriedly passed her a glass of water and raised the bed so that she could lean against it and sit up. Yun Shishir drank a few mouthfuls of water, and the discomfort in her throat subsided a lot. She could not help but sigh. Fruits were really the source of life. It felt as if her mental strength had come alive. Mommy, I really don't know what to do with you. Yu Yu said helplessly, you've been hospitalized twice in just a month. Are you having bad luck this year? Yun Shishir felt wronged and said, yeah. I'm so unlucky to have encountered an elevator malfunction. How unlucky. Yu Yu pouted helplessly. Taking the porridge mousse she had cooked for him, he sat by the bed and fed her spoonful by spoonful. Yun Shishir had a lot of feelings in her heart. On the first night in the hospital, although she was unconscious, she could still feel that Yu Yu had gotten up in the middle of the night to cover her with a blanket. It was better to sweat more when one had a fever. And when she felt hot, sometimes she couldn't take it anymore, so she kicked off the quilt. Yu Yu patiently got up and covered her up again for the next 2 days. Even Mu she sighed. It was a great blessing to have such a filial son. Yun Shishir was well aware of this. Hence, when she looked at Yu Yu, the guilt in her heart almost overwhelmed her. Seeing the unconcealable guilt on her face, Yu Yu pretended to be relaxed and said, Mommy, what's with that look? Yu Yu, it must be hard for you to take care of Mommy like this. Of course. Mommy always kicks off the quilt at night. This is a terrible habit. You're sick now, yet you don't know your place. You must not have slept well these 2 days, right? Yun Shishir was about to cry from self-reproach. How could she be so lousy? How could she let her son worry about her all the time? This feeling was terrible. I didn't sleep well. Well, that's why I'm a little sleepy now, Yu Yu said as he rubbed his eyes. He indeed did not sleep well these few nights. Chapter 845. If you're tired, let's sleep for a while more, okay? Yu wants to sleep with mommy. Xianxia immediately carried him to the bed, covered him with the blanket, and hugged him. Yu nestled in her arms. When his little hand touched her skin, it was wet and sticky. He couldn't help but frown in disgust. Mommy, you're sweating so much. It stinks. Xianxia pretended to be wronged and said, Baby, you actually think mommy stinks? Humph. Why would you dislike stinky mommy? As he spoke, he yawned. Little Munchkin couldn't take it anymore. He didn't tell Xianxia that he hadn't slept properly for 2 days and 2 nights. Other than worrying about her, he was afraid that she would kick the blanket and catch a cold. Of course, this was only part of the reason. The main reason was that he was thinking about something. As for what it was, he naturally wouldn't mention it to Xianxia. Hence, he didn't sleep well. Hence, when his head hit the pillow, he fell asleep very quickly and let out a sweet snoring sound. In the past, he would always sleep quietly. Even his breathing was so soft that it was almost inaudible. However, at this moment, perhaps he was really tired. Even his breathing was a little heavy when he slept. Xianxia's heart ached as she hugged him tighter. She also fell asleep peacefully with him in her arms. The two of them didn't wake up until nighttime. Hence, when Wuxia carried Xiao Yichen into the ward, he frowned slightly when he saw Xianxia and Yu sleeping in each other's arms. It was almost night time. Why weren't they awake yet? The ward wasn't air-conditioned, and there was no fan. Only a small window was open for ventilation. Although the summer was over, the weather was still hot. There was no air conditioning in the ward, and they were still wrapped in blankets. Hence, when Wuxia walked to the bedside, he saw that Xianxia's forehead was covered in sweat. It was obvious that he had perspired a lot. Yu was no exception. He was drenched in sweat, but even though it was so hot, the two of them were still in a deep sleep. Even when Xiao Yichen accidentally bumped into the bedpost and made quite a bit of noise, they did not wake up. He hadn't come over for the past few days. Now that the heavy work on his hands had temporarily come to an end, he pushed everything aside. Little Yichen was also clamoring for his mommy, so he brought him along. Wuxia walked to the bedside and sat down. He reached out his hand and touched her forehead. She had sweated so much and had been on the drip for the past 2 days. Naturally, her fever had subsided. He was happy to see her recover from her illness. This woman was really troublesome. She had entered the palace twice just to film a movie. There was nothing he could do about her. Xianxia was awakened by his movements. She opened her eyes slightly. When her vision cleared, she saw that it was him. Her eyes widened, and she immediately said in a hoarse voice, "You're here?" The moment she spoke, little Munchkin in her arms woke up as well. He seemed to be still sleepy as he rubbed his eyes in a daze. His sleepy eyes widened slightly. When he saw that it was Wuxia, he was stunned for a moment before calling out softly, "Daddy." Wuxia pulled him into his arms and gently stroked his messy hair. "You've been accompanying me in the hospital for the past few days. Did you not sleep well?" Yu nodded and yawned loudly. "I'm awake," he said in a childish voice. From afternoon to night, he had slept for a total of 7 hours. It was time to wake up. Chapter 846. He wondered if he would be able to sleep at night if he slept like this. Yu saw the smile on his father's face and seemed to be infected by his smile. He couldn't help but smile as well. For the father and son pair who had always been at each other's throats, this was probably the warmest and most harmonious scene in history. Yu seemed to have accepted him from the bottom of his heart and no longer resisted his touch. He even called him daddy willingly. In the past, if it weren't for Wuxia's threats, he wouldn't have called him daddy. "Yu, can you do your brother a favor?" Xiao Yichen suddenly came over shamelessly with a fawning smile on his face. Yu glanced at him and saw the fawning smile on his face. He didn't have to think twice to know that he had a favor to ask of him. His elder brother had a favor to ask of him, but he couldn't possibly agree so quickly, could he? Hence, Yu pouted and said, I'm not helping you. Why? Xiao Yichen pouted pitifully and said, actually, the favor I'm asking of you is really a small matter for you. It's a piece of cake for you. I can't help you for free. Yu suddenly rubbed his flat stomach and rolled his eyes. He smiled mischievously and said, how about this? You treat me to a big meal and I'll help you. A big meal? Wasn't that a small matter? Xiao Yichen agreed immediately. Okay. It's a deal then. Okay, tell me, what do you need help with? He. Xiao Yichen smiled and passed the arithmetic book in his hand to him. There are a few questions that I need your help with. Xianxia was so amused that she laughed out loud. These two little fellows were really too interesting. Mu Yaja's expression froze for a moment. How could he say that he felt embarrassed? As the older brother, he had to ask his younger brother for some simple arithmetic questions? Yu's lips twitched as he took the arithmetic book from his brother's hand. Although it was just a few questions, when he opened the book, he saw that it was full of multiplication and division. In addition to the arithmetic book, there were more than 10 English translation questions. Xiao Yichen went to Allen Bell Bilingual Kindergarten. Although it was a kindergarten, the teaching style was very strict. The school insisted on letting the children win at the starting line. They had already started to learn some questions that were only taught in primary school. Therefore, most kindergartens only to count, addition and subtraction, addition and subtraction. Subtraction and multiplication and division were taught. This was difficult for little Yichen. He rubbed his head for a long time and only felt a splitting headache. As for addition and subtraction, it was fortunate that he could count them one by one with his fingers. But when it came to multiplication and division, even if you counted your toes, you wouldn't be able to do it. Little Yichen grumbled, I hate math the most. It's not fun at all to do. You're so stupid. These questions are so easy, but you can't even solve them. If Xiao Yichen saw you use usual extracurricular exercises, he would probably collapse at the desk and foam at the mouth. Xiao Yichen seemed to understand the disdain in Yu's eyes. He held his heart in pain and said, Brother, you despise me. That's for sure. Sob, Xiao Yichen cried as he collapsed on the sofa. Yu took the exercise book and scanned through the questions. It was so simple that it made one's hair stand on end. Xiao Yichen eagerly handed over a pen. However, he did not expect Yu to take the pen from him and fill in the answers almost immediately after reading the questions. Chapter 847. Xiao Yichen felt that in the blink of an eye, Yu had already thrown the neatly filled arithmetic book to him. I'm done. You're so fast. He was in disbelief. Yu answered matter-of-factly, of course. These questions are too easy. Xiao Yichen's eyes went blank for a moment before he hurriedly flipped through the book to see if he had just filled in the answers half-heartedly. However, he casually picked a few answers and checked them with much effort. They were all correct. For a moment, Xiao Yichen could not believe his eyes. He felt that Yuntianyo's calculation speed was unbelievable. How did he do it? How did he finish it so quickly? Xiao Yichen passed the English book to him. There were only a few translation questions left. Yu gave him a look of disdain before he swept through the questions like a whirlwind. Xiao Yichen's mouth was so wide open that 2 eggs could be stuffed in it. Yu reached out to lift his chin and manually closed his mouth. I'm done. That's amazing. Xiao Yichen exclaimed from the bottom of his heart in disbelief. He was waiting for Yu to be trapped by these annoying questions so that he could embarrass him. In the end, he finished it so quickly. He did not even know if it took him more than 5 minutes to finish it. Do you think I'm you? Yu looked proud. Despite his disdainful words, Xiao Yichen's praise was very pleasing to his ears. He raised his chin proudly. You're so good. Yunxia was also stunned by the speed at which he swept through the questions. She did not know that her precious son was so good at studying. Of course. Yu Yu's little tail wagged. I'm much smarter than Xiao Yichen. Yes. Little brother, you're so smart. I spent half a day trying to solve these questions, but you finished them in just a few minutes. You're amazing. Xiao Yichen complimented him again. Yu Yu felt as if she was floating in the air and was about to fly into the sky. Mu Yaja pulled him down in time. Are you hungry? Yes, yes. Yu Yu nodded. I'm starving. I haven't even had dinner yet. Mu Yaja glanced at Yun Shishir with some resentment. Yun Shishir immediately raised her hands in surrender. I was wrong, I was wrong. I didn't take good care of Yu Yu, sob sob sob, mommy, you know it too. As for me, I don't need you to take care of me. You just need to take care of yourself. Yu Yu snorted, but there was a gentle and doting smile on her face. Xiao Yichen hooked his arm around his shoulder and patted his chest. Let's go. Big brother will treat you to a big meal. Thus, the two little guys went out to have fun with their arms around each other's shoulders. Yun Shishir was so amused that she rolled over on the bed and laughed. How did she give birth to these two clowns? One looked cold and aloof on the surface, but was actually a little joker. The other looked gentle and refined on the surface, but was actually a big tsundere. Mu Yaja sat on the bed and hugged the lazy and cute little woman in his arms. He saw that her body under the hospital gown was covered in sweat. She must have perspired a lot. This woman probably hadn't showered for 2 days. Yun Shishir suddenly calmed down when he hugged her like this. They hadn't seen each other for a few days, but she could easily feel the deep emotions in his cold and deep eyes. They were surging and intertwining in the dark. No matter how stupid she was, it wasn't difficult for her to see that the man was trying hard to suppress something at this moment. Chapter 848. Mu Yaja lowered his gaze and looked at the little woman in his arms, who was like a lazy cat. His eyes darkened as he swept his gaze downwards. She was wearing a hospital gown with the collar slightly open. At a glance, one could see the great view hidden under the hospital gown. The man's gaze deepened slightly. He reached out and lifted her collar. Yun Shishir immediately slapped his hand away and said, not knowing whether to laugh or cry, "What are you doing? Don't peek. I haven't seen that part of your body." The man said righteously. Yun Shishir was annoyed. Mu Yaja. You. How many days have you not showered? Oh. Yun Shishir's face turned redder as she said awkwardly, it's been 2 days. Then. Mu Yaja paused. He suddenly got up and carried her in a princess carry. Lowering his head, he breathed in her fragrance. Let's shower together. She widened her eyes abruptly and wanted to push him away in embarrassment. Her face was burning. No. Why not? She shook her head and pursed her lips. Her face was so red that it looked as if blood could drip out. If Yu Yu and Yichen come back and see this, it won't be good. They won't be back for a while. Mu Yaja said with certainty, an unfathomable smile on his face. Yun Shishir was stunned. At first, she was still a little confused. However, when she saw the deep smile in his eyes, she suddenly understood. Mu Yaja must have colluded with Xiao Yichen. Xiao Yichen must have taken Yu Yu away under Mu Yaja's instructions to create private space for him. She angrily said, "Great. You and your father actually colluded in secret." Before she could finish her words, Mu Yaja lowered his head and kissed her lips, stopping her from speaking. Yun Shishir was startled by the sudden kiss. The man's kiss was urgent and deep. He hadn't touched her for a few days, and every part of his body was constantly missing her, clamoring for her. He couldn't control himself no matter how hard he tried. After all, he hadn't touched her for a long time, so his kissing skills were a little rough and clumsy. There were a few times when their lips touched, and it hurt her. Yun Shishir groaned in pain. She clenched her fists and punched his muscular shoulders in protest. However, her insignificant protest was naturally ignored by him. He carried her into the bathroom and put her down. Yun Shishir wanted to run away as soon as she could. But would he give her this chance? That was obviously impossible. He grabbed her back and pressed her against the wall. His tall body leaned forward and easily trapped her in this weak world. The man leaned his head against her forehead and pressed it against the tip of her nose. His voice was so gentle that it seemed like it could drip water. I miss you. He missed her very much. His clear and mellow breath brushed against her ear, burning her cheeks red. Yun Shishir shyly turned her face away. His hazy and hoarse mumbling was extremely magnetic, yet it could make one's heart skip a beat without warning. The man grabbed her chin and forced her to meet his gaze. Did you miss me? He questioned her directly, but it made her face even hotter. How could this man be so evil? No, Yun Shishir said stubbornly, avoiding his gaze. Wuxia was naturally dissatisfied with this answer. His hand gently pinched her waist, which was no match for his. Coincidentally, he grasped her sensitive spot. Yun Shishir let out a weak moan as she was at a loss of what to do. Chapter 849. Wuxia's tall and slender body pressed against her, not giving her any way out. He asked again, Did you miss me, HM? Yes. Yes. Yun Shishir saw his dark eyes and did not dare to provoke him, so she told him the truth. However, her face was already unbelievably red. Wuxia, however, was very satisfied with her reaction. He could not help but lightly touch her alluring red lips. As if he could not get enough of this delicacy with a single kiss, he pressed his cold, thin lips against hers. The tip of his tongue gently traced the shape of her lips, tasting her sweetness. He repeatedly touched her lips like a dragonfly skimming the surface of the water, kissing her lips clean. He pressed his lips against hers and asked again, What did you miss about me? Yun Shishir looked up shyly, but her eyes met with his dark eyes. There was no need to hide the depth in his eyes. Wuxia, stop fooling around. It won't be good if the babies come back and see us. She didn't even dare to think about it. What if Yu and Xiao Yichen suddenly came back and saw this scene that was inappropriate for children? Yun Shishir only felt ashamed. Her face was so hot that it looked like it was about to bleed. Just thinking about it made her so embarrassed that she wanted to hide in a hole. You don't have to care about them. Care about me first, HM. The man naturally wouldn't allow her to evade the topic. Holding her delicate chin, he couldn't help but kiss her delicate jade-like neck. She couldn't help but groan. She completely lost control and immediately bit her lips hard to control herself from making a sound. Her deliberate suppression made him unhappy. His muscular and tall body, which was unique to men, came close to her. Not going to say it, HM? His voice was deep and magnetic. Her heart skipped a beat. For a moment, she even lost control of her breathing and felt suffocated. Shishir, tell me, what did you miss about me? I want to hear it. Wuxia kissed her ear and sucked on her round earlobe. Like an electric shock, it spread through her limbs and bones, making her feel numb. How could this man be so vile? Yun Shishir, on the other hand, was like a rebellious young girl. Whatever he wanted to hear, she would not say. The man finally lost his patience. With one hand on her shoulder, he impatiently tore her hospital gown apart, revealing her snow-white, delicate shoulders and her seductive, jade-like collarbones. At first, Yun Shishir still struggled. However, the man was really anxious. Not allowing her to resist, he lifted her body up. She was so thin that the man's strong arm could support her steadily. From now on, he was the master of the world. His large palm brushed past. She continued to play with him. Yun Shishir's delicate brows furrowed slightly. In the blink of an eye, everything was under his control. Wuxia hurriedly penetrated her in this position. In the bathroom, there was a scene that made people blush and their hearts beat faster. After a long time, Yun Shishir was exhausted. He was so tired that he couldn't even move a finger. She allowed the man to put her into the bathtub. At this point, she couldn't help but sigh at how luxurious this ward was. The bathtub was wide and deep. It was big enough for 2 people to enter completely. Wuxia squeezed a few drops of essential oil into the bathtub. After a while, the large bathroom was filled with a fragrance. Chapter 850. He turned on the shower and allowed the warm water to splash on their bodies. He hugged her and planted a deep kiss on her forehead. Clearly, he was craving the taste of her kiss. After a round of lovemaking, their bodies were covered in a layer of sweat. Gradually, the rising water in the bathtub covered both of them. Submerging their bodies in the water, they instantly felt very comfortable. Xianxia was like a lazy cat, comfortably nestled in his arms and fiddled with his hands. How beautiful! Every finger was fair and slender with distinct joints. It was so beautiful that it put people to shame. This pair of hands should be the hands of an outstanding pianist. They were like exquisitely carved jade bones. In fact, Wuxia had indeed practiced piano and violin since he was young. Xianxia admired every finger of his and then reached out her hand to hold his palm tightly. His fingers were much longer than hers. Compared to his, her hands were small and tender. He could wrap both of them with one hand. Her lips curled slightly as she slowly intertwined her hand with his. Then, their fingers intertwined and locked together. Wuxia held her hand tightly and wrapped his arms around her shoulders from behind, locking her in his embrace. How he wished that time could stop here. At least, such an embrace could become eternal. He longed for her fragrance and warmth. Hugging her, no matter how chaotic his heart was, it settled down instantly. It was only at this moment that he realized that his love for this woman had reached the point where he could not control himself. He had always been a man with a strong desire to be in control. No matter what, he wanted to be in control of the situation. He did not like the feeling of being controlled. No matter how big or small, he wanted to be the master of everything. However, he seemed to lose his sense of propriety every time he was in front of this woman. It turned out that he had already reached such a stage for her. He still remembered that day when Jianghu asked him righteously, "Do you like my mommy?" He thought that he could give a perfect answer to this question now. Love. It was not liking but love. Liking someone was a joy at first sight, but love was hard to separate. At first, he didn't understand. What was love? What did marriage mean? As a result, he felt at a loss. But now, he had found the answer from this woman. She had undoubtedly become his weak spot. His reverse scale. One had to know that with his status, he shouldn't be overly concerned about anything or anyone. It was easy to be threatened by the enemy. His current position was high and lonely. If there were any burdens, they would undoubtedly become his burden. However, towards her, he was willing to shoulder it. Love. Xianxia didn't hear him clearly at first. She asked him in surprise, "What did you just say?" "Nothing." Wuxia's thin lips slightly hooked, pinched her chin, and kissed her lips. Xianxia raised her head and responded to the kiss. Just as she stuck out her delicate tongue, it was accurately captured by him. He gently bit the tip of her tongue. It was tender, just like a top-notch delicacy. His hands began to wander around her body. It was obvious that he was not satisfied with what he had just done. Chapter 851. Every time he touched her, she would feel a sense of extreme sensitivity. Every time his slender fingers brushed past, clusters of flames would be ignited. She couldn't stop trembling in his arms. The temperature in the bathroom suddenly rose. The water vapor filled the air, so much so that she felt like she was going to suffocate under his lingering kiss. He wanted to go deeper, but she quickly stopped him. The man looked confused and asked, "Why, you don't want to? Why are you so energetic?" Xianxia complained, "Spare me, I can't take it anymore." Wuxia raised his eyebrows and suddenly smiled wickedly. He stared at her little face with a mischievous gaze and let out an ambiguous breath. "You can't take it anymore? It seems like you should train harder." He only wanted her once, and she said she couldn't take it anymore. This woman should strengthen her physical strength. He didn't mind exercising more with her. The ambiguity in the man's words was obvious. She didn't know if it was because of the temperature of the water or because of his overly mischievous words, but her face became even hotter. Stop fooling around. Who asked you to be so seductive? Wuxia pushed the blame to her. Under his big palm's caress, she was like a budding flower, blooming under his body little by little. Wuxia sat her on top of him. Most of the time, he liked to admire the shy and seductive look on this little woman's face when they were in love. It was very seductive. Xianxia was so embarrassed that she wanted to die. She wriggled and struggled several times, but it had the opposite effect and made him even more unable to control himself. He had always liked to take the initiative. Therefore, if he wanted, could she escape? Therefore, in this vast world, he once again possessed her. Charming and gentle, a wave of heat swept through. The rising temperature also made the two people immersed in it climb to the peak of brilliance. When Xianxia was once again pressed under his body, in a position that would cause people to have wild and fanciful thoughts, she could not help thinking angrily, this is really a very vile man. After she gave in, she was completely powerless to move. She lay limp under his body and let the warm water submerge her. After flirting with her, even when she opened her eyes, she looked extremely lazy. The seductive look on her face was extremely seductive. He was still full of energy and looked like he wouldn't restrain himself even if he fought for a few more rounds. However, she was completely out of strength. She might as well just end it like this. She weakly nestled in his arms, allowing him to clean her body. He took the shampoo and rubbed it on her head, washing it carefully for her. It seemed that this was not the first time he had served someone. However, she was the only one who could make him lower himself to serve her. However, this was his first time washing someone's hair. He had never treated Xiao Yichen so seriously before. Although she had just recovered from her illness, Xianxia's head still hurt faintly. Therefore, he deliberately massaged the acupuncture points on her head. The massage was just right, making her so comfortable that she couldn't help but relax her brows. It's so comfortable. Xianxia couldn't help but smile. She was obviously enjoying it very much. Wuxia couldn't help but laugh. This little woman knew how to enjoy herself. After that, he helped her clean the bubbles on her body and took a towel to wipe her. Chapter 852. After wiping her clean, he even helped her put on her clothes. Xianxia couldn't help but have an illusion. It was as if she was the Honorable Empress Dowager. And the rumored great executive officer Mu, who was swift and decisive with a wave of his hand, had turned into a loyal and devoted servant. Thinking of this, she was amused by her own thoughts and couldn't help but laugh out loud. Wuxia gently scratched her nose. Stupid woman, what are you laughing at? Nothing. Xianxia quickly stopped laughing. She couldn't let him know what she was thinking. Otherwise, he would torture her to death. Wuxia glanced at her. From her mischievous gaze, he didn't need to think much to know that she was probably cursing something again. He smiled and couldn't help but peck her cheek. He couldn't help but chide her in his heart. This little woman who made people love and hate her. There was a hairdryer in the bathroom, so he carried her in his arms and dried her hair strand by strand. Xianxia was secretly happy. This man usually looked cold, arrogant, and unapproachable, but most of the time, in front of her, he was very patient. Her heart was filled with emotions. Such special treatment made her feel extremely satisfied. He carried her all the way back to the bed. Xianxia quickly asked, "When can I be discharged?" "You want to be discharged?" Wuxia glanced at her. Xianxia nodded vigorously. "Yes, of course I want to. After lying in the hospital for 2 days, I'm going to rot. If I continue lying down, I feel that my limbs are going to degenerate. Your fever has just subsided. Stay for another night." "No." Xianxia acted coquettishly and hugged his arm. She said softly, "Take me home, okay? I don't want to stay in the hospital anymore." This sentence of, "take me home," directly hit the softest part of his heart. Wuxia couldn't help but be stunned for a moment. In an instant, he was surrounded by endless warmth. Go home, his thin lips lifted slightly, and he couldn't help but smile. Okay. I'll take you home. Yes. Thus, Wuxia got up and went to handle the discharge procedures for her. Mu Group's private hospital was located in the city center, where every inch of land was worth its weight in gold. Therefore, the surrounding area was surrounded by bustling shopping malls. Xiao Yichen and Yu walked out of the hospital. With him leading the way, the two little lads walked towards the city center. Along the way, Yu walked at the front while Xiao Yichen followed behind him. From time to time, he would sneak a peek at Yu's handsome little face. He seemed to be in a good mood today. At least, it was rare to see his usual cold expression on his face. It was probably because Yun Shishi's fever had subsided that his mood improved. Yu. Xiao Yichen called out from behind. Yu smiled and turned around. What's up? Seeing the smile on his face, Xiao Yichen couldn't help but smile as well. Why are you walking so fast? You're walking too slowly, Yu said as he turned around and walked forward. However, it seemed that his footsteps had slowed down. Xiao Yichen caught up with him and walked side by side with him. Xiao Yichen lowered his head and saw his little hand moving along the hem of his shirt. Suddenly, he said, Yu. What now? Yu looked a little annoyed. Can I hold your hand? Xiao Yichen asked carefully. There was a shy look on his face. Yu was stunned and immediately rejected him. No. Chapter 853. Why? Can't we hold hands and walk together? Xiao Yichen shouted indignantly. It feels weird. Yu said in a muffled voice, but there was a look of disdain on his face. Xiao Yichen was a little confused. What's weird about it? Yu glanced at him but did not say anything. They were both boys. Why should they hold hands? Boys still had to hold hands, which made him feel strange. Hold hands. Hold hands, hold hands. Xiao Yichen saw that he did not say anything and started to act coquettishly. Yu said angrily, Mu Yichen, stop fooling around. Xiao Yichen was unhappy. He held his hurt heart and said softly, I'm not fooling around. I just want to hold your hand. Yu said coldly, are you a pervert? You're the pervert. Xiao Yichen shouted and moved closer. Hold hands. No. Hold hands. Yu was silent. He could not help but feel a headache coming on. This kid had learned how to act coquettishly. He did not know who he had learned this from. But he did not know who was the first one to act coquettishly. Would he fall for it? It was impossible. Hence, Yu ignored him and walked forward. However, he did not know who had taught Xiao Yichen. Yu refused to hold hands. Would it really work? Hence, without further ado, little Yichen caught up with him and held his soft, fleshy paw without a word. Startled, Yu tried to pull his hand out of his father's grasp. Xiao Yichen held on tightly. The more he struggled, the tighter he held on. Yu was impatient and said coldly, Mu Yichen, let go. No. If you don't, I'll bite you. He could be shameless, but he could also be unreasonable. Xiao Yichen wasn't afraid at all. He taunted, I won't let go even if you bite me. Back then, when they were high up in the sky on the Ferris wheel, he had held on to her hand tightly. Even when it was on the verge of dislocation, even at the very last moment, he had refused to let go. Even if he was bitten, he wouldn't let go. She just wanted to hold his hand. Yu saw the determination on his face and gave up struggling. Biting him was just to scare him. But this kid wasn't scared at all. This was inevitable. He had been training in the special forces since he was young and had experienced all kinds of things. Naturally, he was not afraid of anything. Xiao Yichen got what he wanted. He held his hand tightly and walked side by side with him. His hand was a size bigger than Yu's, so naturally, he was able to hold Yu Yu's little paws in his palm. His hand was so soft. Xiao Yichen couldn't help but pinch his palm. He had a ragdoll cat in the Mu residence. When he was bored, he liked to hold the cat in his arms and pinch its paws. However, Yu Yu's little hand felt better than the cat's paws. It was warm, soft, and extremely cute. Yu Yu's palms, on the other hand, were sensitive and ticklish. Seeing him pinch them, they shrank back a little. Thus, she glared at him, hinting at him to stop before he went too far. Letting him hold her little hand was already a big concession from him. Xiao Yichen understood the warning in his eyes and stopped pinching him. Yu Yu, what do you want to eat? I don't know. Let's walk around and see. He didn't know what he wanted to eat. Now that he was starving, he wasn't as hungry as he was in the hospital. Chapter 854. Yu Yu shook his head. I'm sick of it. Do you eat it every day? I can cook it myself. Yu Yu thought to himself. These Western restaurants were so ostentatious, but the Western food they made was not authentic at all. Furthermore, he often cooked Western food at home. The standards of these Western restaurants were not as good as his. Compared to Western food, he was more interested in Chinese food. Xiao Yichen licked his lips and said, I'm a little hungry too. Actually, I quite like pizza. Pizza tastes terrible, Yu Yu said mercilessly. I don't like pizza. Xiao Yichen was silent for a moment, but he let him be. Okay, let's go find something you like to eat. He smiled gently, but he did not hide the affection in his eyes. Yu Yu looked at him and his heart skipped a beat. He thought that this kid would insist on choosing a restaurant that he liked. He did not expect that he would let him choose. It seemed that this older brother was quite tolerant of him. With that thought, he continued to walk forward. Little Yichen held his brother's hand as they browsed the entire way. Although he did not see a restaurant that Yu Yu wanted to eat at, he still enjoyed this aimless stroll. The two little guys suddenly passed by a grilled fish restaurant. Yu Yu walked to the entrance and could not walk any further. He sniffed and smelled the aroma from the restaurant. It was really mouth-watering. Xiao Yichen could not help but be deeply attracted by the aroma. He could not help but lean forward. Yu Yu, shall we eat grilled fish? Oh, okay. Yu Yu licked his lips. He had never eaten grilled fish before, but the aroma was really tempting. It should be delicious, right? With that thought, he let Xiao Yichen lead him into the restaurant. When they stepped into the restaurant, the greeter at the entrance saw the two little guys walk in. The smile on his face froze and his body froze. These two little munchkins are so cute. They were pink and tender, just like two soft and cute glutinous rice balls. The two little munchkins were wearing shirts and suspenders of the same style, looking like elegant little gentlemen. But, was it just the two of them? Where are their parents? The usher looked behind them. Yu Yu said, hello, both of you. Two. The usher was a little surprised. These two little lads looked like they were 6 or 7 years old. They were so young. Did they have the ability to spend money? One had to know that this restaurant was very expensive. Would these two children not have enough money to pay the bill? Thus, she squatted down and asked in a friendly manner, children, where are your parents? Just the two of you? Or did he get lost? I'm not lost, Auntie. We're here to eat. Please lead us to our seats, Xiao Yichen said politely with a bright smile. As he spoke, he saw that there was still doubt on her face. He said, I brought money. We won't dine and dash. Even though the usher was puzzled, she could only lead them to their seats and bring them the menu. Yu Yu flipped open the menu and ordered the signature grilled fish and some skewers. Then, he waited patiently for the dishes to be served. It was lunchtime, so there were many people in the restaurant. It was a hubbub of voices and the atmosphere was noisy. Yu Yu took out his cell phone. He had been busy taking care of his mother in the hospital and had put aside the company's work. When he opened his inbox, emails popped out one after another. He browsed through them one by one. Halfway through, Xiao Yichen suddenly snatched his cell phone away. Chapter 855. Little Yichen looked at his father's phone and saw that there were more than a dozen unread emails in his inbox on the screen. Yu was shocked and immediately snatched his phone back. Why did you snatch my phone? I was just bored. Xiao Yichen rested his chin on his hand and looked at him pitifully. You only care about your phone. There's no one to talk to me. Yu's lips twitched. He did not know what to talk to him about. He felt that he had nothing in common with him. However, he didn't say anything and just quietly put his phone away. No matter how important the matter was, it was not urgent to deal with it after dinner. Thus, the two of them just stared at each other like that. Xiao Yichen looked out of the window and saw people walking to and fro on the street. At this time, many people were strolling on the street. Suddenly, he saw two children playing, chasing each other, and fooling around not far away. He stared at them for a long time until the children disappeared from his sight. Then, he sighed sadly. Suddenly, he thought of something. He looked up and asked excitedly, "Where are we going after dinner?" "Back to the hospital." Yu's reply was concise. "Ah," Xiao Yichen dragged out the last syllable in disappointment. He held his head and looked disappointed. Compared to him, Yu was more like a mature and steady veteran. He said concisely, "After dinner, we'll go back to the hospital to accompany Mommy." "But I want to go shopping," he said. "It's rare for me to go out. I don't want to rush back." "Where do you want to go?" "The amusement park." Xiao Yichen said, his eyes clear and bright. He thought about the last time he was in Wuxia Valley. He did not have enough fun and still wanted to go back. He did not have time to go on many rides and felt a little regretful. Yu frowned and reminded him in a low voice, "Mu Yichen, look at the time. The amusement park is closed a long time ago." "Oh." Xiao Yichen sighed dejectedly. Yu held his forehead. This kid was really a child. But when he thought about it, it made sense. After all, Mu Yichen was at the age where he was playful. Presumably, he rarely had the chance to go out. Mu Yaja was busy with work and rarely had free time. Therefore, he was afraid that he had neglected him, so he rarely went out. Therefore, he did not want to rush home. With that thought in mind, Yu said, "If we're done eating, shall we go watch a movie?" "Sure." Xiao Yichen nodded happily. "Are there any good movies recently?" "Yes, there is one." Yu said, "Have you seen Zootopia?" "No." "It's an interesting movie." "I'll watch it with you," Yu said. Xiao Yichen nodded. "Okay." Yu smiled and picked up her phone to book the tickets online. This movie had been very popular recently, and it was hard to get a single ticket. Therefore, at this moment, he could only buy a seat at the back. After booking the tickets, the dishes were quickly served. The grilled fish was fragrant. Together with the skewers, it looked very tempting. Xiao Yichen was already drooling. He eagerly picked up a grilled chicken wing and took a bite. Yu said, "Don't eat the tip of the wing." "Why?" Xiao Yichen blinked and stared at him with a puzzled expression. "Because the tip of the wing contains toxins. The tip of the wing is equivalent to the lymph nodes of the human body. It's where the toxins are expelled." Xiao Yichen was stunned when he heard that. Chapter 856. I realize that you know quite a lot. Xiao Yichen was a little surprised. "You seem to know everything." "Every time I cook braised chicken wings, I cut off the tip of the wings," Yu said. When he cooked, he paid more attention to these things. He knew what he could not eat and what was good for his body. Because he had an allergic constitution, he had to pay special attention to these things. His mother also had some things that she could not eat and had to abstain from. Therefore, he paid more attention to these things. Yu had just finished a grilled sausage when he suddenly saw a few waiters staring at them from the corner of his eye. He furrowed his brows and looked a little unhappy. Xiao Yichen followed his gaze and saw a few waiters looking at their table from time to time. He was a little puzzled. You, These waiters are so pitiful. Why do you say that? Xiao Yichen said sadly, look, they keep staring at us. They must be hungry. Yu was speechless. Idiot, they're afraid that we won't have the money to pay and run away. That's too petty. Xiao Yichen suddenly opened his school bag and took out a bulging wallet. He placed it on the table. Yu's eyes twitched violently. What are you doing? I'll pay first so that they won't be on guard. As he spoke, he called the waiter over. The waiter immediately rushed over. How can I help you, my friends? I'll pay the bill. Huh? The waiter was stunned. Xiao Yichen raised his eyebrows slightly. I'll pay the bill. The waiter immediately brought the bill. The total is 350 yuan. Xiao Yichen nodded and opened his wallet. In an instant, it was as if a golden light was shining. There were rows of cards in his black wallet, and there was a huge stack of cash in between them. At a glance, there were roughly a few thousand yuan. It was shocking. This child, he was a little rich. To think that they were worried that these two children would not have the money to pay the bill. It seemed that they had worried too much. Xiao Yichen took out 400 yuan and asked them to give him the change. When the waiter brought the change over, his expression had already changed. He was already looking at these two little fellows in a new light. Xiao Yichen raised his eyebrows slightly and said in a slightly dissatisfied tone, so you don't have to be wary of us eating and dashing anymore? The waiter blushed at their words and immediately apologized again. Yu did not want to listen to their explanation and waved his hand. Xiao Yichen put the wallet away. Yu suddenly asked, why do you have so much cash on you? Not much. For the sake of convenience. Xiao Yichen said. He had many credit cards, but they were all supplementary cards. In fact, he was not old enough to use the supplementary card. If he was not in a mall owned by Mu Group, the counters in other malls would refuse to use the card on account of his young age. Therefore, he always kept cash with him in case of emergency. By the time the two little guys finished their meal, there was only half an hour before the movie started. They rushed back and forth to catch up with the movie. It was not Yu's first time watching a movie at the cinema, but it was Xiao Yichen's first time watching a movie. Therefore, it was inevitable that he was unusually excited. One had to know that he usually watched movies at home in his home theater. However, in terms of atmosphere, the movie theater was the best. Therefore, when the movie started, Xiao Yichen could not calm down. Yu could not help but reach out and knock his head. Be quiet and watch the movie. If you continue to be so noisy, you will be chased out. Chapter 857. Zootopia was a Hollywood animated film. It was well made and had a lot of laughs. What was even more impressive was that every character was cute and adorable. Xiao Yichen was fascinated by the film and laughed from time to time. Yu, on the other hand, was bored to death and was even a little sleepy. Compared to Xiao Yichen, he was not interested in animated films. He thought that Xiao Yichen would probably like it, so he accompanied him to watch it. There were a few times when he almost fell asleep. Halfway through the movie, just as the plot was getting exciting, Yu was startled by an unusual noise. The rustling sounds of the woman's resistance attracted his attention. It seemed to be made by the person sitting in the front row. Puzzled, Yu poked his head over and saw a scene that made his heart skip a beat. Sitting in the front row was a young girl who was about 19 years old. Sitting next to her was a bald man wearing a black singlet and a large gold chain. There was a long and frightening scar on the back of his head. It looked very hideous. The man's face did not look like a decent person. He was extremely vicious and looked a bit like a delinquent youth. Especially his pair of eyes, they were cunning and wretched. One look and one could tell that he was not a good person. Although it was said that one should not judge a book by its cover, looking at the man's behavior, he turned sideways and placed one hand on the woman's fair thigh, rubbing it back and forth. The woman protested softly, "Don't move. Shoo, don't make a sound." The light in the huge movie theater was extremely dim. Through the faint light reflected off the screen, he could see that the woman's face was frighteningly pale. "I beg you, don't." The woman shook her head and refused while trying to push the man's hand away from her skirt. The man became angry and threatened, "Shut up." As he spoke, he flashed a shiny butterfly knife from his waist. The butterfly knife flashed with a cold light. The woman was so frightened that she did not dare to move anymore. She bit her lips tightly and her eyes were wet. She felt wronged and scared. She tried to stand up and leave several times, but the man held her down by the shoulder. "Play with me for a while." As the man said this, he grabbed her shoulders and pulled her into his embrace. The girl's face was filled with uneasiness and fear. Her wide eyes were filled with helplessness and despair. The cinema was full of people. This round was packed to the brim. However, the people sitting next to the girl were either indifferent or looked straight ahead as if they were watching a movie seriously. They didn't care about it at all, as if they didn't see it at all. There were also some who were frightened by this scene, but did not dare to make a sound. They quietly got up and left. In the blink of an eye, most of the people around the girl had left. Only the girl and the man were left in that row. The girl felt even more isolated and helpless. 2 lines of clear tears rolled down her cheeks as she let out a terrified whimper. She was scared out of her wits, and her entire body trembled violently. "If you dare to make even the slightest sound, I can't guarantee what I will do. Behave yourself." The man threatened as he reached his hand into her chest. From time to time, the girl would let out a flustered groan and close her eyes in shame and helplessness. Is this sexual harassment? A phrase suddenly appeared in Yu Yu's mind. He despised this kind of behavior. Chapter 858. However, there was nothing he could do. After all, the man had a butterfly knife on him and was a dangerous person. Yu Yu was contemplating whether he should call the police or report this to the security guards. Xiao Yichen noticed this as well. He stuck his head out and clasped his hands on the back of the chair in front of him. His face was a little angry. Before Yu Yu could stop him, he suddenly spoke. "Uncle, what are you doing?" The man jumped in shock and turned around. When he saw that it was a young child, he glared at him fiercely. "Get lost. Uncle is busy. Don't disturb me." Xiao Yichen wanted to say something, but Yu Yu immediately grabbed his shoulders. "Are you crazy? What's wrong? He has a knife on him. Don't cause trouble. He's a bad guy. He's bullying that girl. This has nothing to do with you, right?" Yu Yu frowned slightly. Although he couldn't stand it, they were still children. They were defenseless and weak. There should be a limit to their bravery. Xiao Yichen asked, "What if the girl sitting there is mommy?" Yu Yu was stunned by this question. Xiao Yichen said, "Yu Yu, don't worry. I won't do anything dangerous." Yu Yu's heart skipped a beat. Wasn't this dangerous? The man had a knife on him. If there was a conflict, the knife would be merciless. Wasn't he afraid? While he was still in a daze, Xiao Yichen stood up and walked to the front row. Just as the man was about to put his hand under the girl's skirt, Xiao Yichen grabbed his wrist forcefully. The man was shocked. He widened his eyes and looked up. When he saw that it was little Munchkin, who he had just scolded, he flew into a rage. "Kid, what are you trying to do?" The girl was also shocked. She looked up hopefully, thinking that someone had come to save her from the abyss of suffering. However, when she looked up, she saw that it was only a 6 or 7-year-old kid. Her hopes seemed to have been washed away by a basin of cold water. Her face turned ashen again. Little Yichen glanced at her before shifting his gaze to the man. He sized him up from head to toe until his gaze landed on the man's shameful part, where a small tent stood tall. His heart was filled with disgust. "Uncle, haven't you heard of an old saying?" The man was stunned. He had thought that the child would be scared away by his ferocious face. But he didn't expect this kid to be so daring. What kind of lady is she? A gentleman has his own way. As soon as he said that, the girl beside him looked like she did not know whether to laugh or cry. Was there such a saying? The man was also stunned. Who sent this kid to be a clown? Get lost. The man impatiently tried to shake off the kid's hand. However, he realized that the kid's hand did not budge even though he was using so much force. Instead, he tightened his grip. The man's arm was thick and strong, so his small hand was just enough to hold it. However, he didn't know where the kid's strength came from, but it actually hurt him. If the kid used more force, he was afraid that the kid would break his wrist. You little brat, how dare you interrupt me? I told you to get lost. Didn't you hear me? Chapter 859. His hands were twisted together in a strange position, and the pain made him break out in cold sweat. Ah, the man screamed. He did not expect a child to be so strong. Uncle, what do you mean by, I'm disturbing you? None of your business. This is my woman, my wife. What I do has nothing to do with you. The man cursed unhappily. Your wife? Xiao Yichen blinked his big clear eyes and smiled wittily. Then, he turned around and asked the girl, are you his girlfriend? The girl was already dumbfounded. Seeing a child like him being able to hold onto such a strong man, she also felt that it was inconceivable. However, it was as if she was grabbing onto a life-saving straw. When he asked, she immediately explained incoherently, no. No, I don't know him. Oh. Xiao Yichen nodded and said to the man, look, she doesn't know you. Why, are you trying to use force to force her to submit? You're so dirty. The man's face turned red and he threatened, you little brat, what does it have to do with you? If you don't want to die, let go of my hand. Otherwise, I'll stab you to death. The girl said with tears in her eyes, little brother, I really don't know him. He's a hooligan, and he's threatening me. Sob, please, save me. She did not know why she had placed all her hopes on a 6 or 7-year-old little boy. However, although this little boy was young, he gave people a great sense of security. The man said angrily, B*tch, shut up. As soon as he finished speaking, Xiao Yichen stepped on his toes. The man was wearing flip-flops, so his toes felt like they were going to be crushed under the force of Xiao Yichen's stomp. He immediately howled in pain and broke out in cold sweat. He tried his best to break free, but the child's strength was so great that he could not break free no matter how hard he tried. Xiao Yichen said slowly and elegantly, Uncle, you have to be more gentlemanly when you treat a lady. The sound of their conflict attracted the attention of other people in the theater. Seeing that the child had made a move, the other men felt ashamed, but at the same time, they seemed to have gained confidence. They walked forward and subdued the man. Yu rushed over with the cinema's security. However, when he arrived, he saw the man being pinned to the ground and little Yichen stepping on his head from above. He, too, was momentarily stunned on the spot. What was going on? Just now, when Xiao Yichen walked over, he was afraid that something would happen, so he hurriedly went to look for the security. However, it was different from what he had imagined. She thought that this man was very powerful, but she didn't expect him to be a weakling. The security guards dragged the man out of the theater and apologized to the audience. The girl was greatly frightened. She could no longer watch the movie. She tidied herself up and planned to leave. Before she left, she bowed deeply to Xiao Yichen and said, Little brother, thank you. Thank you for being willing to help me. If it wasn't for you, I really wouldn't know what to do. Thank you. Sister, did you come to watch the movie alone? I came with my boyfriend. The girl suddenly touched her sore spot. She could no longer hold back her tears, and they flowed down her face. Where's your boyfriend? Yu looked confused. Chapter 860. The girl recounted what had just happened. It turned out that the hooligan had been sitting in her boyfriend's seat. She had entered the scene first and her boyfriend had gone to buy popcorn. Before the movie had even started, the hooligan had sat beside her. She had immediately reminded him that the seat was taken, but he had remained seated. When her boyfriend had arrived, the two of them had gotten into an argument. What she didn't expect was that her beloved boyfriend at first tried to reason with this delinquent youth. However, when this delinquent showed the butterfly knife in his hand, her boyfriend was forced to flee in fear, leaving her alone. Thus, she had been completely disheartened. When the girl had left, the movie was nearing its end. Xiao Yichen had already lost interest in the movie, so the two of them left the theater one after another. Yu Yu had yet to recover from his shock. Mu Yichen, weren't you afraid just now? Yu Yu had to ask the question that had been bothering him. What was there to be afraid of? Xiao Yichen raised his eyebrows in confusion. That man had a knife in his hand. So what? If he had stabbed you with the knife, would you not have been afraid? Yu Yu still had lingering fears and looked uneasy. He had been really afraid just now. If that man had really lost his mind and stabbed him with the knife, he did not dare to think about the consequences. Xiao Yichen thought about it carefully and suddenly smirked. The condition is that he has to stab me. Yu Yu was stunned by his arrogant and disdainful words. Xiao Yichen saw that his eyes were still filled with uneasiness and shock. He could not help but move closer and nudge him with his elbow. Do you think that your brother is very powerful? Yu Yu rolled his eyes. Don't be so full of yourself. Xiao Yichen glanced at him and suddenly thought of something. A gentle smile appeared on his face. Then, were you very worried about me just now? Just now, when Yu Yu had rushed over with the bodyguards, he had clearly seen the worried look on her face. This younger brother of his was a little tsundere. He might not say it on the surface, but he might be worried in his heart. He must be worried about him, afraid that he would get hurt. Yu Yu glanced at him coldly but remained silent. Xiao Yichen immediately shouted in dissatisfaction, "What's with that look?" "Nothing. Let's go." Yu Yu snorted and walked forward. Seeing this, Xiao Yichen hurriedly chased after him and held his hand tightly. Yu Yu was stunned and instinctively wanted to shake off his hand. However, Mu Yichen held on tightly and did not allow him to break free. Yu Yu, don't worry. I will only do things if I am confident. I won't do anything risky. Xiao Yichen explained in a serious tone. Yu Yu grunted gloomily. Next time, don't do this again. It makes me very worried. Xiao Yichen's expression did not change, but he was secretly laughing in his heart. This rascal was still so stubborn. He was clearly very worried about him, wasn't he? Who asked his younger brother to be so tsundere? He was clearly very concerned about him, but he never said anything. Xiao Yichen's mood lightened because of Yu Yu's silent concern. Yu Yu, your brother is very powerful, very strong. So, I will definitely protect you. Your brother is very strong. So, I will definitely protect you. Chapter 861. Yu Yu's heart skipped a beat, but he didn't say anything. He turned his head away awkwardly, but the corners of his mouth curled into a subtle smile. After walking out of the theater, they arrived at a huge shopping mall. There was an ice cream cart at the entrance of the mall. There were many pre-made popsicles on the cart. They were exactly the same as the ones sold by Fox Nick in Zootopia. Xiao Yichen asked, Yu Yu, do you want to eat a popsicle? Yes. Yu Yu licked his pink lips and nodded. Xiao Yichen asked him to wait for him at the same spot and told him to take care of his wallet. Then, he went to buy the popsicles. Yu Yu was waiting at the same spot when he suddenly felt a chill coming from behind him. His intuition was extremely sensitive, so when he glanced back, he saw a large male palm reaching towards him, covering his mouth tightly. Yu Yu didn't even have the chance to struggle before he lost all resistance. When Xiao Yichen returned to the same spot after buying the popsicles, he realized that Yu Yu was nowhere to be seen. He frowned and looked around in surprise. However, he couldn't find any trace of Yu Yu. Where did he go? He bit his lip and felt that something was amiss. He didn't know what was going on. Yu Yu was gone. Where did he go? Could it be that he went to visit other stores? That was impossible. Yu Yu wouldn't go anywhere. He must have been waiting for him at the same spot. Where could he have gone? Xiao Yichen was so anxious that a thin layer of sweat appeared on his forehead. Yu Yu was carried out of the shopping mall by the man. He walked quickly. He widened his eyes and struggled with all his might. However, the man's strength made it impossible for him to resist. He held him tightly in his arms and his mouth was covered by his large hand. He couldn't make a sound. Was this a kidnapping? Or had he been abducted? He was a little surprised. He had no idea who this man was. The news that he had seen a few days ago suddenly flashed through his mind. It was said that a child was taken away by a human trafficker in a big shopping mall. The child was crying non-stop and attracted a crowd. However, the human trafficker was very clever. In the face of the crowd's doubts, he calmly said that the child was disobedient and needed to be disciplined. He claimed to be the child's father. However, no matter how much the child cried and screamed, "You are not my father. You're not my father." However, the crowd still did not suspect him. Most of them were just there to join in the fun and watch. In essence, they were indifferent. Thus, the poor child was abducted just like that, and his whereabouts were still unknown. Yu Yu broke out in a cold sweat. Could it be that he had been kidnapped? With such suspicions, he looked around and suddenly caught a glimpse of a large gold chain around the man's neck. An ominous suspicion arose in his heart. Could it be that delinquent youth from the cinema just now? He didn't remember wrongly. Earlier in the cinema, although the lights were dim and he couldn't see the man's face clearly, he remembered one thing clearly. That was that the man was wearing a gold chain around his neck. He looked like a ruffian. Then it must be this man. Could it be that this man was here for revenge? Without waiting for him to think too much, the man carried him to a secluded alley where no one seemed to pass by and threw him on the ground. Chapter 862. His shoulder, in particular, had hit the ground and almost dislocated it. He hugged his shoulder and sat up from the ground. When he looked up, he saw that the man was indeed the delinquent from the movie theater. He held his bald head with his large palm and glared at him with a pair of fierce and gangster-like eyes. He immediately scolded him. "Brat! Damn it, you're really something. You almost made me go to the police station for tea. Damn it, you're so capable at such a young age." Yu Yu bit his lip hard. The man probably thought that he was Xiao Yichen. Earlier in the movie theater, the man did not realize that the two little guys were twins. However, he remembered Xiao Yichen's appearance very clearly. He thought about how the brat's interruption had ruined his plans and almost made him go to the police station. Just thinking about it made the man furious. He had been running amok on the black street for so many years, but he did not expect to almost fall into the hands of a brat who had not even been weaned off milk. Of course, he was furious. After being chased out of the movie theater, he was not in a hurry to leave. Instead, he waited at the entrance of the movie theater. He wanted to wait for the arrogant brat to leave the movie theater so that he could beat him up. Damn it! Brat, where did you get such great skills? How dare you go against me? You're so arrogant at such a young age. The bald man squatted down in front of him and slapped him hard on the cheek. Yu Yu turned his face expressionlessly and glared at him coldly. The bald man was surprised and said, Little brat, have you learned your lesson? What's wrong? You were so arrogant just now. Why are you afraid now? You're not saying anything? Aren't you very capable? Now you don't even dare to say a word. Yu Yu shrunk his shoulders and his eyes were full of disgust. It was as if he was disgusted by the man's touch. He had always been polite and well-behaved. He rarely cursed or even scolded someone. However, when faced with this man, he could not help but want to call him trash. He used his power to bully others. He had nothing but power, so he used it to bully the weak. He was the most shameless. However, he knew that if he cursed out loud, he would definitely anger this man. He wasn't Xiao Yichen. He wasn't that capable. Based on what he saw, this man was probably a gangster. He didn't want to provoke a gangster. Therefore, Yu Yu kept her mouth shut and did not dare to say anything. Sometimes, one had to learn how to endure humiliation. If she spoke too fast and angered this man, she would be covered in wounds. Mommy was going to be sad again. He didn't want to upset his mommy. The man saw that he was silent, but he became more and more angry. He scolded and kicked up. Damn it. Say something. You were so arrogant just now. Why are you acting like a retard now? Do you know how to speak human language? The strength of this kick was not small. Yu Yu was immediately kicked to the ground. She was in so much pain that she broke out in cold sweat. The man stepped on the back of Yu Yu's hand, and Yu Yu cried out in pain. Haha. Does it hurt? With this hand of yours, weren't you very capable just now? Why can't you use any strength now? The man humiliated him as he twisted his heel and stomped on his hand again and again. Chapter 863. Despite the increasing pain in his hand, Yu Yu still kept his mouth shut and did not utter a sound. Not to mention begging for mercy, he did not even groan in pain. Damn it. You little brat, you sure have a tough mouth. The man slapped her in the face again. Yu Yu's face was turned to the side from the slap. At the same time, the wallet in his arms fell to the ground. Yu Yu was shocked and reached out to pick up the wallet. However, the man was one step ahead of him and snatched the wallet away. The bald man snorted coldly and smiled evilly. He opened the wallet and saw stacks of cash and rows of exquisite credit cards. Oh. Are you a rich kid? The man was shocked. Then, he smirked evilly. I didn't expect you to be a rich kid. You have so much money on you. You must be extremely wealthy, right? Yu Yu's brows furrowed deeply as he demanded in a neither servile nor overbearing manner, return my wallet to me. Is this your wallet? The man smirked. Did you say this is your wallet? Haha. Now, this wallet belongs to me. Yu Yu was furious. This was Xiao Yichen's wallet. Now that it was in the man's hands, he felt that this wallet was tainted by his dirty hands. Disgusting, this is my wallet. Please don't touch it. Not even a finger could do it. He found it dirty. You little brat, you don't seem to be sensible at all. You interrupted me just now. Not only did I not teach you a lesson, you even dared to talk back to me. The man was so angry that he slapped Yu Yu's face again. Yu Yu felt 2 slaps on his face. His cheeks were burning and the pain was unbearable. Tears welled up in his eyes as he felt wronged. However, he was so stubborn that he did not want this scum to see him in such a weak state. He forced his tears back and stubbornly raised his head. He glared coldly at the man. His gaze was like a sharp and cold knife. It was as if he wanted to kill him with his gaze. The man snorted in disdain. You brat, you're quite stubborn. Looks like I have to teach you a lesson. With that, the man spat and grabbed Yu Yu's collar. Just as he was about to give him a kick, a childish voice was heard from behind. Get lost. I won't allow you to touch a single strand of my brother's hair. The bald man was stunned. Before he could react to the situation, he felt a fierce murderous aura coming from behind him. He turned his head abruptly and saw a child standing at the entrance of the alley. Under the moonlight, his shadow stretched diagonally across the alley. In the dim light, he could vaguely see that this child with an overbearing aura had the same appearance as the child in his hands. The bald man was stunned. At the same time, he looked back at the child in his hand. For a moment, he felt as if he had seen a ghost. Why did these 2 brats look exactly the same? Who the fuck are you? Xiao Yichen followed the location on his watch. When he passed by the alley, he heard the man cursing and immediately rushed over. He happened to see this scene. Seeing that this man dared to be violent towards his little brother, Xiao Yichen was furious. He immediately rushed over and kicked the wall. Using the wall as leverage, he sent a flying kick towards the man's face. Chapter 864. The bald man felt as if his entire back had been hit by a powerful force. His internal organs were in turmoil from the shock, and he almost spat out a mouthful of blood. Cough, 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 the man was in so much pain that he frowned. His mouth twitched for a while before he spat out a mouthful of blood mixed with a few broken teeth. He did not know how such a young child could be so skillful. That one roundhouse kick had actually broken 3 or 4 of his teeth. The man wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and looked at the pool of blood on the ground. He licked his broken teeth with the tip of his tongue and suddenly raised his head, glaring fiercely at the boy. Xiao Yichen did not seem to care about him at all. He immediately helped Yu up and carefully checked the wounds on his body. His cheeks were red, and his clothes were stained with dirty footprints. There was no need to think about how ruthless this man had been. Did he hit you? Yu pursed her pink lips and nodded gently. He did. Just as he finished speaking, Xiao Yichen's anger surged, and for a moment, his domineering aura spread to every corner of the alley. At this moment, the aura on his body changed drastically. The smile on his face, which was always filled with innocence and cuteness, had completely faded. It was replaced by a layer of chilling coldness that made one's heart palpitate. It was so cold that it was as if a layer of ice had covered it. F***CKU. You hit me so hard. If I don't teach you a lesson, you won't know your place. F***CK. The man cursed and got up from the ground. Then, he took out a sharp butterfly knife from his pocket and swung it a few times in the air. A few cold glints flashed across Xiao Yichen's eyes. The man was swinging the butterfly knife while closing in on him. Originally, he thought that when he pulled out his saber, this kid's face would reveal a terrified and shocked expression, and he would be frightened by him. However, little Yicheng's face was still as cold as ever, as if he was not afraid at all. Only the coldness in his beautiful eyes deepened. Yu suddenly reached out and tugged at the corner of Xiao Yichen's shirt. Seeing that the man had pulled out a knife, Yu suddenly lost his confidence. She knew that Xiao Yichen was skilled in martial arts, but the man was carrying a knife. What if he was accidentally stabbed? He didn't want his stupid brother to get hurt. Xiao Yichen noticed that he was tugging at the corner of his shirt and turned around to look at him. What happened? He has a knife on him. Yu wanted to say something but hesitated, not knowing what to say. However, the worry in his eyes could not be concealed. Xiao Yichen looked into his eyes and saw the deep worry in his eyes. Only then did his icy expression soften a little. He could tell that his younger brother was worried about him. Therefore, he comforted her, "Don't worry. I'm fine. Go and call the police now." Yu was about to speak when he saw the man rushing toward Xiao Yichen with a knife. The knife in his hand was about to stab Xiao Yichen in the next second. He was so frightened that he wanted to pull Xiao Yichen behind him. In the blink of an eye, Xiao Yichen suddenly turned around and grabbed the man's wrist that was holding the knife tightly. Time seemed to stop at this moment. He opened his eyes and held the man's hand tightly. The knife in the man's hand was pointed at his face, and the tip of the knife was only an inch away from his eyes. Chapter 865. If little Yichen's reaction had been a few seconds later, the knife would have pierced his eyes without a second thought. The consequences would have been unimaginable. There was even a moment when he imagined Xiao Yichen being stabbed in the eye. His heartbeat quickened. The man struggled a few times, but Xiao Yichen's strength was unbelievably strong. He gripped the man's wrist tightly and did not allow him to resist. The bald man could not believe his eyes. After all, he had been in the Black Street for so many years and had experienced many killings. Every opponent he met was stronger and taller than this child. He was a hooligan and often got into fights. Moreover, it was real fights. Just the scar on the back of his head was left there by someone. It was a bloody mess and the wound was almost a millimeter deep. If it was any deeper, he would have lost his life. It could be said that he had been through life and death for so many years. Naturally, his strength was not to be underestimated. He originally thought that this child would have some skills because he had been trained since he was young. However, he did not expect him to be so strong that he could not move at all with just one hand on his wrist. He did not consider that he was just a gangster and that his so-called killings were only for small fries. However, he did not consider that Xiao Yichen had been arranged by Wuxia to train in the special forces since he was young. The soldiers who were trained in the special forces were true war machines. They were all warriors who licked the blood from the muzzle of their guns. Although Xiao Yichen was young, he had grown up in the special forces training camp. Strictly speaking, he was still inferior to those special forces soldiers. However, it was still a piece of cake to deal with him. Xiao Yichen twisted the man's wrist slightly. A crack was heard, which sounded like a dislocated joint. The man groaned and the butterfly knife in his hand fell to the ground. Xiao Yichen kicked the knife away and looked up at the man's face again. The provocation and contempt in his eyes were self-evident. "You," the man was so shocked that large beads of cold sweat appeared on his forehead. His entire face changed. Xiao Yichen snorted in disdain, but more than that, he was looking down on Xiao Yichen. Then, he raised his leg and kicked Xiao Yichen's crotch. The man was in so much pain that he arched his body. His lower body went limp and he fell to the ground, his legs twitching uncontrollably. "Stinking brat. F***ck, you dare to kick me." The man was unwilling and even more unconvinced. Even though he was rolling on the ground while covering his crotch, he still couldn't help but curse a few times. Xiao Yichen walked over. This time, he did not show any mercy and kicked him hard in the face. Simple and crude moves, almost without any technique, but every move was aimed at the bridge of his nose. "Which dirty hand did you use to touch my brother?" Xiao Yichen stepped on his head with one foot. His gaze fell on his flailing arms, and his other foot suddenly stepped on his right hand. "This one?" he asked casually and raised his eyebrows. His tone was cold and dangerous. "Let go." The man cursed. Xiao Yichen increased the strength of his foot and brazenly stomped on his face. "Shut up." Bang! Xiao Yichen kicked the bridge of his nose again. The man groaned and was in so much pain that tears rolled down his cheeks. Chapter 866. Yu, who was standing at the side, was dumbfounded. This stupid brother of his, he thought that other than a cute face, there was nothing good about him. He did not expect him to be so powerful. He was much more powerful than he had imagined. He was like a cold warrior. For a moment, he seemed to see Wuxia's arrogant and domineering shadow in him. He was handsome. Even though he did not want to admit it, he had to admit that Xiao Yichen was elegant and handsome. "Brother." Xiao Yichen turned around and looked at him. Yu immediately walked over. "Brother, where did this guy touch you just now?" He slapped me twice." "And?" Xiao Yichen asked again. "He kicked my shoulder." "Come here and return what he gave you just now," Xiao Yichen said. Yu was stunned and shook his head. "Why? You don't dare?" Xiao Yichen looked confused. The man at his feet did not dare to speak. He was like a dead fish waiting to be slaughtered. He had no other choice but to surrender. Even though he did not want to admit it, he had to admit that this kid was a ruthless character. "Don't be afraid." "I'm not afraid." Yu looked at the man who was pinned to the ground by Xiao Yichen and said coldly, "I just feel disgusted. I don't want to dirty my hands." He had a serious obsession with cleanliness. This man was too disgusting. He did not want to touch him at all. Xiao Yichen snorted and turned around. His gaze fell on the man at his feet. "It's disgusting. However, Daddy told me that force is not used to bully the weak. It is used to protect the people you love. Force is used to protect the people you love." It is also used to protect your family. As he thought of this, he stepped on the man's hand and crushed it with his heel. A strange sound was heard and the man's wrist was crushed. The bald man groaned in pain. His eyes were bloodshot as if they had been pierced by needles. Xiao Yichen stepped on his other hand and crushed it hard. With a crack, his other hand was also crippled. Ah! The man couldn't hold it in any longer and let out a cry of pain like a pig being slaughtered. The veins on his forehead bulged. He couldn't bear the double pain and immediately begged for mercy. Please, don't. Xiao Yichen ignored his pleas. He grabbed his shirt and pulled him up from the ground. Then, he kicked him like a rubber ball and sent him flying a few meters away. Bang! The man was like a kite with a broken string as he fell into the corner. His head was bleeding profusely. Can't even withstand a single blow. Xiao Yichen harumphed coldly, then turned around with a gentle smile on his face. He gently held Yu Yu's hand and said, "Let's go back." Okay. Just as the two little lads were about to leave, the man's cold and vicious curses came from behind them. "You two brats, do you know who I am? How dare you touch me? Don't let me see you again. Otherwise, I'll kill you." Oh. Yu Yu suddenly stopped in his tracks and slowly turned his head around. His voice was cold as he asked, "Who do you work for? Why don't you tell me?" Chapter 867. Yu Yu's eyes darkened. Silver Wolf Gang? He paused for a moment before a sly smile appeared on his face. Okay, I'll remember that. With that, his lips curled into a cold smirk as he left with little Yichen. The man stared at the backs of the two children as they left. For some reason, he felt a bone-chilling fear. Before returning to the hospital, Yu Yu specially went to a children's clothing store to change out of his dirty clothes and buy a new set of clothes. He did not want his mother to see the shoe prints on his clothes and did not want her to worry. He also bought a mask to remove the slap mark on his face. Hence, when the two children returned to the ward, Xianxia was shocked to see Yu Yu wearing a mask. "Yu Yu, why are you wearing a mask?" Yu Yu's voice was muffled through the mask. There are many viruses in the hospital. My immune system is weak and I'm afraid of being infected. Recently, there were many people who caught colds during the summer. Xianxia understood what was going on. Yu Yu's immune system was especially weak. Since there were many viruses in the hospital, wearing a mask could protect him from being infected. Wuxia had already settled the discharge procedures for her and the family drove home. As soon as they reached home, Yu Yu entered the study and locked the door. Xiao Yichen walked to the door and knocked. He wanted to follow them in, but Yu Yu's voice was heard. "I want to read. Don't disturb me." "Read?" Xiao Yichen's head swelled when he heard the word read. Yu Yu locked himself in the study and took off the mask on his face. His face was still burning. He touched his face gently. Even though Xiao Yichen had taught that man a lesson, the humiliation in his heart could not be erased. Was this the feeling of being humiliated? Yu Yu pursed his lips as a cold glint flashed across his eyes. He sat on the computer chair and leaned back slightly. He took out his phone and dialed Li Hanlan's number. The call went through quickly. "President Yun, why are you, Agent Li?" Yu Yu was impatient and interrupted his long speech. Li Hanlan immediately said, Go ahead. Silver Wolf Gang? What kind of organization is it? Silver Wolf Gang? Li Hanlan's voice was filled with doubt. "I don't know much about it. Check and give me the results as soon as possible," Yu Yu instructed and hung up the phone. Someone gently knocked on the door. The boy looked up. "Who is it?" "It's me." "Yu Yu, let me in," Xiao Yichen said weakly. "I don't want to be disturbed when I'm reading." Yu Yu caressed his red and swollen face. He did not want anyone to see him in such a sorry state. "Let me in, will you?" "I'm worried about you," Xiao Yichen said carefully. Yu Yu remained silent and turned on his computer. He did not want to talk to him. Little Yichen patiently knocked on the door again and again. When he saw that Yu Yu was still unwilling to open the door, he whispered, "If you don't open your mouth, I'll tell Mommy that you..." Before he could finish his sentence, Yu Yu immediately stood up and walked to the door. He opened it with a look of displeasure. Xiao Yichen was delighted when he saw that he had finally opened the door. Yu Yu glanced at him coldly. "Mu Yichen, if you dare tell Mommy about what happened today, I'll beat you up." Chapter 868. Xiao Yichen immediately dashed into the study, closed the door, and locked it. His heart ached as he looked at Yichen's swollen face. I saw that your face was swollen, so..." He held Yichen's hand and pushed him back into the chair. Then, he carefully wet a towel with cold water and wiped Yichen's face. Xiao Yichen stared at Yichen's face. He was very careful with the strength of his hand, afraid that he would accidentally hurt Yichen. Yu Yu was stunned. He looked at Xiao Yichen's face up close. His expression was cautious and his movements were very gentle. He was afraid that he would accidentally hurt Yichen if he did not control the strength of his hand. Xiao Yichen looked at Yichen's swollen face, pouted, and blew on it. "Your face is swollen. Does it hurt?" he asked softly. "It doesn't hurt." Yu Yu pursed his lips stubbornly. Xiao Yichen increased the strength of his hand, causing Yu Yu to gasp in pain. "How dare you say it doesn't hurt?" Xiao Yichen said helplessly, "Your face is so swollen. How can it not hurt? Don't tell Mommy." Yu Yu immediately warned him. "Don't let Mommy know about this." "Why?" Xiao Yichen did not understand. "Why don't you let Mommy know that you're injured? She'll be heartbroken. Then, she'll cry again. Then, Yichen would have no choice but to try his best to comfort his stupid mommy." Xiao Yichen was stunned. He raised his eyebrows but did not say anything. His gaze fell on Yichen's swollen face as he carefully continued to massage Yichen's face. The cold towel was applied to Yichen's burning face, and the pain dissipated a little. Xiao Yichen gently applied a cold compress on Yichen's face as he said, "I often got injured when I was young." "Injured? That's because I've been training in the military since I was a child. It's normal for me to get bruises and bruises." Xiao Yichen pursed his lips as he recalled his sad past. "You're training in the military?" Yu Yu's eyes widened in disbelief. "Why?" "Because Daddy wants to train me. Daddy said that boys should know how to endure hardships from a young age and practice some skills. This way, when they grow up, they will be able to protect their loved ones." As Xiao Yichen spoke, he paused and said with some distress, "In the past, I really didn't understand why the other children had such a happy life, but I had no choice but to stay in the military and receive such boring training. Every time I got hurt, no one comforted me or encouraged me. Training in the army is really tough. There was once when I was training in the wild, I was accidentally bitten by a snake and bled a lot." As he spoke, Xiao Yichen's hands suddenly stopped moving. "Did you know? It's a very thin and long snake. I don't know if it's poisonous, but it bit my ankle. It was so painful that tears came out of my eyes." As he narrated, the scene vividly appeared in Yu Yu's mind. The thought of the snake wriggling in the grass, especially when it raised its head and flicked its bright red tongue continuously, sent chills down Yichen's spine. It must have been very painful. Yu Yu frowned slightly. Just imagining that scene was enough to make one fearful. Of course it was very painful. After I was bitten, I used a knife to pry the snake away. I didn't walk far before I fainted. Xiao Yichen pursed his lips. Then, when I woke up, I was already in the hospital. I heard from the captain that the snake was poisonous. Fortunately, we found it in time. Otherwise, I would have died. Chapter 869. Yu Yu's heart skipped a beat. He did not expect Xiao Yichen to be so powerful. How much had he gone through to become so strong? He had thought that this kid was not human. He was so small, yet he was able to fight against an adult thug. It was truly shocking. It turned out that he had gone through hellish training in the army since he was young. Yu Yu asked again, "What happened after that?" Xiao Yichen pursed his lips. After that, I recuperated for a while and returned to the army for training. Yu Yu was speechless. Based on Yun Shusher's personality, she would have been heartbroken and would not have let her beloved go through that torture. The training in the army is dry, tedious, and especially cruel. There is no winning or losing. There is only life and death. Xiao Yichen spoke calmly. He did not think that it was a mistake for his daddy to arrange for him to enter the army for training. I didn't understand in the past, but I do now. Daddy said that the weak are prey to the strong in this world. No matter what the rules are, they are decided by the strong. Therefore, I want to be a strong person and protect my beloved family. The weak are prey to the strong. The rules are decided by the strong. In the past, he did not understand and felt that his daddy's decision was too cruel. He had almost lost his life a few times and almost had a brush with death. But now, he understood. That's why, sometimes, I really envy you. Yu Yu looked up at him in disbelief. This kid said that he envied him? That was because he did not understand how he had lived for the past 7 years. If he did, he would not have said such things. It was getting late. Mu Yaja received a call and rushed back to the office. Yun Shusher carried Xiao Yichen to the bathroom for a shower. Yu Yu was in the study reading the emails that he had not read yet. Li Hanlin called to say that he had investigated the matter. The Silver Wolf Gang is a group of thugs from the East Street. The East Street is the territory of the Gu family. East Street, a famous black street in the capital. The Li Dongxiang he knew was a small fry in the East Street. And this East Street was under the jurisdiction of the Gu family. The Gu family can be said to be a powerful family that exists side by side with the Mu family. In the past few years, they have used some means to whitewash many of the black assets under their name and set up a listed company. After all, they are a century-old family and still have many forces entrenched in the capital. East Street was one of the assets under the Gu family's name. In the Gu family, other than the head of the family, Gu Jinglian, the Gu family was divided into 2 branches and 4 halls, all of which were headed by members of the Gu family elder cabinet. This Eastern Street was under the jurisdiction of the Vermilion Bird Hall's hall master, Gu Aoshue. It was said that the Silver Wolf group that Gu Aoshue had set up on East Street was actually a debt collection company. To put it bluntly, it was a debt collection company. Debt collection company? Chapter 870. The Silver Wolf group had a bad reputation. In order to get back their debts, they would resort to any means possible. Apart from that, the Silver Wolf group was also in charge of the biggest underground casino under the Gu family. They were very rampant. Director Yun, why did you ask me to investigate the Silver Wolf group? Agent Li, I understood something yesterday, Yu Yu suddenly said. Li Hanlin was stunned. Yu Yu said calmly, this world is crueler than I thought. It's the law of the jungle. The weak will never be able to set the rules. That's why I want to become stronger. Then, what you mean is, the Hurricane group wanted me to join them. I'll make my decision as soon as possible. Yu Yu hung up the phone after he finished speaking. He threw his phone on the sofa and walked to the window. He looked out of the window silently, his eyes deep in thought. Early in the morning, Yun Shusher was planning to go to the supermarket to buy some hygiene products. Before she left, she received a call from Xiao Shui. She had not contacted Xiao Shui for a long time. Ever since she returned to China, she had rarely contacted her. She would occasionally send her messages to ask about her well-being. It was said that after she returned to China, her family arranged for her to work in a foreign company. As a newcomer, she needed time to adapt to the environment. Hence, she disappeared without a trace. After picking up the phone, Xiao Shui wailed, Shusher, I'm finally on leave. It's my day off today. Let's go out for coffee. I haven't heard from you for a long time. I thought you disappeared from the face of the earth. Yun Shusher chuckled. You know, newcomers have to hand over their work when they just joined the company. Sigh, I'm going to be tortured to death. I'm in a terrible fix. If I don't have a day off, I'm afraid I'll be overworked soon. Xiao Shui complained as she cursed her immediate superior. I didn't expect you to be so patient. Yun Shishir was surprised. If you were in the past, you would have quit long ago. I was immature in the past. Now that I've been an adult for so long, should have some sense of responsibility, right? Xiao Shui said with a grin. Then, she asked her, 2:00 in the afternoon at the Peninsula Cafe. Be there or be square. Just like that, they made a promise to the world. In the afternoon, Yun Shishir dressed up and went out early. She specially went to the dessert shop to buy Xiao Shui's favorite vanilla pancake and hurried over. When they arrived at the Peninsula Cafe, Yun Shishir sat at the reserved seat. Because she came early, Xiao Shuan had not arrived yet. She first ordered a cup of mocha frappuccino, leaned on the sofa comfortably, and looked out of the window at the street scenery outside. In the afternoon, the warm sun shone on her body. She closed her eyes comfortably. The weather tonight wasn't too hot, and the temperature was just right. She even felt a little sleepy, so she simply curled up on the sofa, closed her eyes, and pretended to sleep. When Xiao Shui arrived, she happened to see a portrait of a beauty. Yun Shishir was nestled in the corner of the sofa. The warm sunlight outside the window shone on her cheeks, making her skin look as white as jade. Drunk on the fragrance of a beauty, for some reason, this word suddenly popped into Xiao Shui's mind. They hadn't met for a long time, and Yun Shishir suddenly became charming. It was probably because she had been too busy with work in the past and neglected her own appearance. Chapter 871. Yun Shishir felt awkward at first, but her manager said, "You're not famous now, but when the movie is released and you become famous, if the media publishes those sneaky photos of you dressed so shabbily and without class, they'll think that I'm abusing you." Yun Shishir had no way of rejecting his offer. Thus, beautiful clothes of various styles filled her entire wardrobe. In fact, she was the kind of woman who let nature take its course. She was not good at clothes, and her manager often complained about it. Xiao Shui was gratified. A while ago, Yun Shishir was very popular on Weibo, so much so that Xiao Shui, who did not use Weibo often, developed the habit of scrolling through it. She was sincerely happy for her. Shishir? Xiao Shui called out a few times tentatively. Yun Shishir opened her eyes abruptly and woke up. When she saw her friend's warm smile, she could not help but smile. Xiao Shui, you're here. There was a traffic jam for half an hour because of a car accident. Boo-hoo. Shishir, you must have waited for a long time. It's okay, her words came to an abrupt halt. Yun Shishir caught a glimpse of an unfamiliar man standing beside her and could not help but be startled. Xiao Shui followed her gaze and saw the man beside her. She immediately hooked her arm around his and leaned her head on him like a little bird, introducing him generously. Shishir, let me introduce you. This is my boyfriend, Gao Nan. We've been dating for a month. Today is our 1-month anniversary, hee. You don't mind that I brought my boyfriend along, right? Yun Shishir's face was blank for a moment before she smiled. Why would I mind? It's just a little too sudden. Gao Nan immediately stepped forward and extended his hand to Yun Shishir, saying politely, "Hello, Shishir. I'm Gao Nan, Xiao Shui's colleague and boyfriend. She often talks about you." For some reason, the man's gaze on her made her feel particularly uncomfortable. She did not know if it was an illusion or something, but she felt that the man's gaze was particularly deep when he looked at her. It was so deep that it made her hair stand on end. However, his gaze soon returned to normal. "Hello." Yun Shishir shook his hand. However, when she wanted to withdraw her hand, the man's grip tightened. Yun Shishir's face embarrassed, and she pulled her hand back. What's wrong with this man? It's so strange. Why is he holding my hand so tightly? Yun Shishir's impression of the man instantly. She felt that the man's gaze on her, and it was especially uncomfortable. Xiao Shui and Gao Nan, and the waiter. She ordered 2 cups, coffee, and snacks. Shishir's coffee, 2, Gao Nan's, who was the woman's. Before Yun Shishir could reply, Xiao Shui shook her head. Shishir has never liked coffee. Why? Gao Nan's attention seemed to be especially focused on Yun Shishir. He looked at her and smiled politely. Coffee may be bitter, but it's especially fragrant when it's added. I don't like coffee. Thank you. Yun Shishir politely declined. Since she said so, Gao Nan could not say anything else.